Yes, it's only up to this.
Ron, were you saying something before? I want to make sure that the audio in here works.
Can you hear me okay? No, I think it's because I didn't have it muted. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we're good. I'm going to mute the room until it's ready to go. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll mute it now. Thanks.
Much more intimate conversation for a finance committee there.
Well, you're close to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're missing. Yeah, Cody Johnson. Jack. Ron's online.
Ron is on.
Cody Jack.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so let's see, we got Jack.
How you doing?
All right, we will call FinCom meeting to order at 7 p.m. on 4/15. This meeting is being recorded. Your participation means that you approve of both being recorded and redistributed as online viewing. We do have Ron and Jack participating remotely, so all the votes will have to be roll call vote. Per our agenda, I'm going to take things a little bit out of order, just in the essence of people's times. So, Jeremy, I'd like to start with the revote on the fiscal 2026 budget piece, and then we can go into the warrant articles. I'm going to suggest maybe we take those out of order based off of who's in the room so that we can help usher people out. They don't have to stay for the whole thing. And then we can do review and approve of previous meeting minutes. Everybody's welcome to stay as long as they like. If you want to hear us talk about meeting minutes, you're more than welcome. So, all right. So, Jeremy, you want to kick us off with the revoting of the 2026 budget?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, FinCom. So as you know, we voted both this board and select board together bottom line budget as presented. The assumption on the funding for the full-time planner position was a $20,000 subsidy from CPC, and that's how the budget was voted. CPC voted a $15,000 subsidy after subsequent conversations. So select board had voted an amended budget, reducing the building maintenance in Department 192 by $5,000. And then increasing the salaries in Department 175 by $5,000. So if you remember, we parked an additional kind of reserve in building maintenance, and the select board conversation was, rather than take it from FinCom reserves, where there's that kind of added flexibility at the end of the year, we'd take it from building maintenance. And then if we needed more building maintenance, we would have it in FinCom reserves to be able to use. So the motion the select board used was vote to reduce 192 building maintenance by 5,000 and increase 175 salaries by 5,000.
Great. Okay, I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support the fiscal 2026 budget as previously presented with the modifications that Jeremy just outlined.
So moved.
Second.
Right. Any discussion from folks? All right, all those in favor? Roll call vote.
Jesse Carl, aye.
Mike Mandelay, aye. Nick Stanker, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zabuto, aye.
Gregor, aye. All right, unanimously passes. All right, on to the fun one. So ATM warrant. Jeremy, do you want to pop that up on the screen for us?
Yeah, certainly. Can you see my screen here?
Ken.
All right, great. So this is what I'm calling the town administrator's warrant report. We'll use this tonight to walk through the warrant. This will be posted online after probably at the end of this week, the beginning of next. And then we'll have it printed out some places for folks. And we hope to be able to mail out a card with a QR code, but that's kind of TBD. So what this does, lays out a little bit of conduct of town meeting. This is just me stealing stuff from other towns who have already done this before. And then, so Mike, if you want to, I'm not sure how you want to take these out of motion or out of order. If you want to go through some of our guests first, or if you want to get through some of the housekeeping first, how would you like to approach this?
Let's go through the guests that we have first. That way we can let people go.
Okay.
Why don't we start with BPT? So, do you want to scroll down to the article?
Yes. Sorry, I don't have them memorized yet.
The warrant's not online yet, right?
It was just posted online earlier today. All right, so BVT stabilization fund. So do we have folks there from BVT?
Yep.
Yes, we do.
Do you want to describe the article?
I'm going to read exactly or digest it just a second. By the select board and the finance committee.
So the article
It's up, it's before you to decide.
it is before, yeah, it is up for us to decide whether to recommend to the town to support the article as written.
The select board,
Additional.
the select board voted to not favorably recommend this article to town meeting.
Well, I asked you to reconsider that thing, right? During the Upton Finance Committee presentation, we discovered that Mendon and Upton previously supported the stabilization fund for Mendon Upton school system, which is the same fund we seek. So there's an inconsistency if you were to reject our request. We look for, as the town, all systems look for best practices elsewhere. And so when we saw that situation in the Mendon Upton regional system, because they're our neighbor, we asked for the same flexibility that the town has already agreed to extend to them. There was some concern that the nomenclature or the phraseology of the state left some of the ability to store this to be too great. So our school committee took a formal vote I can share that with you if you'd like. Okay, I have a copy of the vote. I'll do that if I may.
So I've got a number of questions on this that we weren't able to ask when you came and presented to select board because this didn't come up as an item, even though Hopedale was presented with this as an item in previous years' town meetings. So principally, why a stabilization fund and not just a gift, grant, or donation fund? How does this differ from E&D? And I would say that comparing what the town has done in the past for MURSD, where we have a 50% vote on kind of how this district operates versus a 1 out of 13 vote on how the district operates. I don't think the town voting differently for one versus the other is an intellectual inconsistency. So if you could just explain a little bit about kind of why now, why we weren't presented with it earlier, how it differs from E&D, and why you don't just use a gift and donation fund.
I can see why you might have come to those conclusions without being aware of some of the additional questions which you just raised. One of the differences of a 50-50% is the burden of responsibility is much greater than having 12 other partners. So I question the logic of suggesting that.
Yeah, but you came in with a 9.5% budget increase this year, and then we're one out of 13. No department that we have had a 9.5% budget increase. So yeah, the level of responsibility and the burden to funding is actually quite a bit greater proportionately for BVT this year versus MURSD.
Well, once again, I'm sorry to debate it in this fashion, but the stabilization fund is a zero request for next year, for FY26. It's really a strategy to address future concerns and to allow us to have an account to store or save money. Here's the explanation I mentioned. I'll walk through this.
Can you explain how it differs from E&D? That was the select board's principal concern. Principal question.
Give me a moment. I'm just distributing. I'll be glad to do that.
Thank you.
What's E&D?
Access and efficiency.
So each account has one of those.
So, yeah. Let me just explain what I just gave you. So the inside sheet shows the vote that the district school committee took just recently on April 10th, confirming that this account would not be greater than 5% at its highest mark. There is no money in it at all. In fact, there's $30 that's been donated. And so the plan is to be very cautious, in eventually creating this account and building it. Okay. So the school committee is looking at donations and fundraising rather than assessments to build the account. On the next page, you'll find a description of, again, which Jeremy doesn't have the benefit of until I brought it this evening, it describes the difference between the excess and deficiency account and this account. And then the last page, and I'll explain this in greater detail, are a list of some of the projects that we would address eventually with the capital skills stabilization fund. Now, your excess and deficiency, which is the equivalent of free cash for a community, is certified numbers from the Department of Revenue, right? It cannot exceed 5%. We use excess and deficiency, and we use it again this year. In fact, both systems have done this regularly to offset assessments, to do matching money for grants. For example, we use $400,000 of excess deficiency to secure a $1.2 million construction grant for our culinary arts area. That construction is going on right now, but we secure the ability to get $1.2 million rather than ask the towns for the money by committing $400,000 from excess deficiency. And we'll also use $250,000 of excess deficiency to do the first phase of our recently approved, unanimously approved across 13 towns roof project, which is before the Mass School Building Authority and subject to receive substantial reimbursement. So we use that, and the school committee uses it, in publicly posted votes in a certain way. This is very different than that. This is what we would, the proposed stabilization is to address the sample projects that are listed here, developed with the principal, now the new superintendent, along with facilities and other committees to allow us to continue to make improvements. 6 vocational schools in Massachusetts have recently secured huge $300 million type investments in building new schools. Your vocational school is 65 years old, but we have not asked for that type of money or investment. What we've tried to do and consistently done is make improvements ourselves. You're welcome to see and tour any of those improvements at any point. So this is an account to strengthen our bond rating for borrowing, which won't take place until FY27. That borrowing is specifically for the roof and heating, ventilation, air conditioning upgrades on the roof. And to give us an additional revenue stream eventually, or a place to store money that we can raise money to do that. So it is quite likely, there are multiple rules that we have to live by. I trust you know that. The operation budget must be approved by 2/3 of the town. One of the differences for us. Okay, each town has 4 other members. So 2/3 are 9 towns voting in affirmative for the budget. Usually it's unanimous. We do not expect it to be an issue this time either. The stabilization account, though, according to the state, has a different regulation. That is, only a simple majority of the towns need to vote in the affirmative to create a stabilization account. That is 7 towns. I explained to Jeremy and others that the town of Hopedale opted to vote to stabilization. They asked me permission if they could vote for stabilization next year. We said, of course, if you choose to do that, by all means. So we had a yes vote right away. We now need 6 towns vote in favor for the stabilization. Based on the finance committee presentations that we've made, it is my projection that at least 6 other towns will vote in favor. I don't expect all the towns necessarily to vote in favor, but at least 7, okay, which means it'll enable us to establish, to follow the example of what exists in many regional schools. We also discovered that some of our towns, for example, the town of Sutton has 6 stabilization accounts, right? We do not have one of this nature. That's why we've been encouraged by the treasurer to do it. Let me last point out, I'm retiring after 32 years. I didn't have to ask for this. I didn't have to ask for anything else other than get through the budget. But I was convinced professionally that this was the right thing to do. I listened to the treasurer. I looked at examples of the need to create alternative streams. The other new development is that the federal government, as I'm sure you've noticed, is at least threatening substantial reductions. And so you need new abilities to save money. We are very aggressive with grants. We expect to get $4 million in grants that will be over and above or complement the assessments that are included in our budget. The stabilization fund is an added opportunity to save money, to use it to address things like listed here. You would never save enough money in this account, living within what the school committee voted for a maximum for fields or for any major changes. Okay, but you could address a lot of the smaller projects like this, and usually the way we do it is our own students and staff doing the work. We have the advantage of having vocational technical expertise in the building and cooperative arrangements. We hope that the merits of this and the consistency of having 2 regional schools and serving them in a similar nature come into play here. We're the vocational school that did the designs for the police station, the drafting work, have done work for the senior citizen centers, have done all kinds of work in the town, even done work in this building relative to some of the windows. I don't know why we were treated in any lesser fashion, given the cooperation that we've demonstrated in the time that I've seen.
Yeah, I would say we're aware of the many projects. You definitely list them all in helping us identify the benefits of having a vocational school available to us, right? So I do want to ask one question of MURSD from a stabilization account perspective. I went back and tried to look through some of the budget documentation, and I don't have every line item of your budget completely memorized.
Not yet. Not yet. I know you will.
Not yet. I'm trying to get there, right? I'm trying to get there. But can you just make the group aware of a stabilization account that might be similar to what Dr. Fitzpatrick is describing?
Sure, yeah. So we established it probably 2017 or 18. We had 2 years remaining of MSBA reimbursement after the debt was paid off on the MISCO and NITMUC project. So the towns allowed us to put that money into a stabilization account. We have since used that to replace the boilers at NITMUC that had to be replaced. We're using some of those funds now to offset some of the design and OPM costs. I mean, it is a way to put money aside for future projects. I think that all school districts, when you have some extra money at the end of the year and you see that and you can appropriate, $100,000, whatever it might be, into a stabilization account for the rainy day fund, I think that's something that's a benefit, just like the town has a stabilization account.
Let me make it clear, when I suggested or pointed out the fact that Mendon Upton has one, I do that as a compliment, not as a criticism.
Yeah,
Is there a cap on ours?
No.
Would you suggest a cap on yours?
It's built in. If you look at the vote, the school committee took a 5% maximum cap, but there's nothing in it now.
5% of your budget, right?
Pardon?
5% of your budget.
Yeah, they decided to be 5% to mirror the maximum guarantee,
right.
even though it's separate and different.
so when I tried to do a little bit of research on this from Mass General laws, I thought that I saw that those are governing a similar cap. So I may have misread what I found, but I thought that I saw stabilization accounts, but per Mass General law, were capped at 5% of operating budget.
There are different rules for each type of stabilization.
Yeah.
Okay, not to confuse it. Almost all regional systems have a different stabilization account known as Chapter 71 for regional transportation.
Yep.
Okay, and there are guidelines for that are different than others. In that particular stabilization account, that's, I don't need to make this too complicated, but I'm saying that regional finance has.
This is the finance committee, so we are interested in finance.
No, and I'm the son of a former finance committee member in Milford, by the way. Okay, so I'm saying that the rules of each of the accounts vary. Okay, and the stabilization for regional finance is that if you receive additional money over and above that which you projected or predicted to receive from the state, all right, then it goes into that account and then it's used the very next year to reduce the transportation cost or the assessment. It's not used for anything else. And so in this case, there is a 5% of property value for this particular statement. That's too big a number and that's totally outside. That's so unrealistic that we have no intention, and the school committee had no intention, and wanted to make certain that was clear by taking this vote. They want it limited, okay, even though there's no money in it yet, okay, even at its maximum, not to exceed 5%. So this is an additional step to remove any, say, concern or fear that this account, which has nothing in it, would become monstrous.
Yeah, well, that's why I tried to do a little bit of research on it, as I was concerned about how large that account could get. And I thought that I saw in the Mass General laws that it did govern.
I'm looking at the advisory. It says that the amount to be appropriated cannot exceed 5% of the local assessments. Doesn't say that the net balance can't be 5%.
All right, so that's where I.
You're on target. Okay, but once my school committee wanted to take an additional step in, relative to securing ideally even more than 7 communities in favor.
Yeah. So another question is, a question was sent out over email about this exact conversation. This level of detail, the write-up, the expected, like this was not provided when we asked the question. So I'm trying to understand where all this comes from now and why it's been so long since that email was sent versus now seeing this information.
I'm not sure which email you're referring, but I'm saying that our budget we met with you on the 5th at your request, okay, to present a preliminary budget. That was before our budget was even approved. Then on the 13th, our school committee held a public hearing and then adopted the budget. That wasn't very long ago either, okay? But I'm saying that Anthony and I have made the rounds of the visitations of most of the towns. And when we make the presentations like this, whether it's before the budget's approved or after the budget's approved, we did one last night, for example, in Bellingham. By the way, that finance committee supported both the operational budget and the stabilization. But so we discover questions when we visit. And so what I've always done in 32 years is then try to answer those questions. And Mike would know that because it's a long-term member. So when we discover there's a question, we do our best to answer it. The other thing is, it was just on the 10th of April that the school committee took this vote. Okay, it said that the school committee became aware, as we shared that, as we've made presentations, there seems to be some concern that this account could have more money in it than people are comfortable. Yeah. So that's a nice problem to have, but we want to assure the towns so we can replicate what's happened elsewhere, including even the neighborhood, to have a 5% cap on it at its maximum. So this action was taken. So it's a step-by-step process. As you discover something, you do your best to address it. Yes. That's why. Okay. We have another finance committee meeting tomorrow. No, it's okay. I just said it's part of the job. But I'm saying that we're just now, and we're responding to the invitations.
Yeah.
We're not. It's not our calendar.
You are definitely, you're here. You're presenting, so I appreciate that. Part of my personal concern was the lack of information provided when we first asked the question. And that is also part of the calculus that I'm going to assume went into why there was a not favorable recommendation from the select board, was because of the lack of information that was provided to Jeremy and I believe Elena was on that as well, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, yeah. Of what was provided to us when that went into that vote. So it's why I come into this with a just question of, where is all this? Where was this before? And why do we have like a great pack of information now? I appreciate the detail you're providing at the moment. I would have liked to have had that previously when the select board was talking to those details and when we had asked those questions.
And frankly, I would love it earlier as well. Okay, I'm just saying that if you look at a 32 track record, I've made presentations to the finance committee every year here. I've been present at the town meeting every year here. Okay, as soon as I heard the question, we took measures to answer it. And that's one of the reasons we're here, to provide this added information once we heard the question, okay, and the need for clarification, and hope that it creates a revisiting. And I'm not sure if you're aware that Mendon Upton had the same stabilization account, which now we're requesting. But now you know that.
Yep.
Okay.
So what are you currently doing now if you have overage? How are you handling this without a stabilization account?
You have, what's happening is certain aspects of the repairs are being delayed. Okay?
No, I'm saying if you have overages, where is that money going?
Well, there's not much overage. Okay, in the sense of right now, there is roughly 2.5% in the excess and deficiency. That's roughly $750,000. That's what exists now. And so that's all. We would continue to draw from that, I guess, because it's the only thing that exists.
So I'm guessing if there's overage, it's going into that account versus a stabilization account that you don't have.
That's correct. All right. But as I pointed, we would use the stabilization to focus on improvements and repairs. Where we don't do that for the excess deficiency, we use excess deficiency to secure grants, okay, and or to reduce the assessments, right, or to delay the need to borrow for the bond. So it has a series of functions and purposes. This would allow us to, where capital stabilizations exist, they're focused on capital items, making improvements.
So you could make those repairs and investments out of E&D without this stabilization, right? Because stabilization is meant to stabilize in times of, economic tumult, outside shocks, things like that. Using a stabilization for capital improvements is not typically best practice for stabilization. Stabilization, that's more of a free cash E&D sort of expenditure. And so if you're talking about, increasing your bond rating by having available funds, then you can't go. I'm a former municipal credit rating analyst. You can't go to Moody's or Fitch and say, I'm going to spend this down each year and expect that to bring you from AA2 to AA1. 5% is not going to bring you up anyway. So my concerns are that everything that you've explained sounds like it can be done through excess and deficiency. And every community, I've talked to 11 of the communities, and 6 of them have expressed either outright opposition or healthy skepticism. So I think we're kind of a toss-up in terms of what the support across the board is. And I would just like to know what this does that E&D doesn't do, because I don't think I've heard that.
Let me try again then. This account is intended to create a list, which you have yet to see, but was listed, to address repairs in our 65-year-old building. And
but E&D can do that, right?
Excuse me.
E&D.
Hold on just a second, please. And to mirror that which the town has already granted to the neighboring regional school system. That's different from these other towns relative to have regional schools. Upton, the finance committee, I'm not sure just who you spoke with, but the visitations or conversations I've had, all right, that was Upton opposed to this?
No, Upton was one of the 4 that was kind of TBD up in the air.
So your other member town with Mendon is in support, but your encouragement is not. Also, you would not be aware because you weren't here for some of the projects that this school did in this community prior to your arrival.
I think that's irrelevant to this question.
And we're asking for the same fairness to be treated.
So I want to stay focused on Jeremy's exact question is how, so if you are currently at 2.5% of your operating budget, you have a healthy margin of adding additional grants into that account to do exactly what is on these projects, correct?
No, there's a misunderstanding there. The grants are not willing to cover these types of things. They're not grant worthy, okay? The $1.2 million grant that we secured is targeted to improvements to the culinary arts profession, pathway, and trade program, all right? It's a major change. It's not this list. These are like home repairs. This creates an account which we do not yet have, and an ability for us to raise money to place it in an account, not through the E&D process, which already has more demands made up on it. The maximum you can have in your E&D is 5%. That's not unique to us. It's true of all regional schools. That's a guideline of the state and consistent with your findings. This is an additional, this is the time to seek additional ways to have money donated to address the needs of your 65-year-old building. Not to build a $300 million new vocational school like the Tri-County did, a neighbor in Franklin, but to allow us to continue to make improvements and give us a place to store the money to make those improvements, all right?
So I guess maybe this is part of your question as well. Let's just assume that you didn't get the support from all the towns that you needed. What would happen with the grants that you plan to receive moving forward?
We're going to continue to pursue grants. Okay, but grants can be for special education services. They're not necessarily committed to capital items only, all right? Grants could offer instructional curriculum services, professional development, all kinds of other things that this cannot be. This account has specifically targeted wherever it exists, wherever there's secured support to offer for capital improvements.
I'm still,
it's categorical.
yeah, I personally, I don't know if others on the committee agree, I personally still am not understanding how you don't have the vehicles today to do what you need to do in place already. Like, and what I want to avoid is well, they have one too. Right, just because somebody else has one doesn't mean that you have to have one. Like, I understand that argument and I understand that approach, but I would like to understand the vehicles you have in place today, why this is required versus the vehicles you already have in place to do these exact same things.
Let me walk through the original part of that logic. So if somebody else has it, you can't have it?
That's not what he said at all.
That's not what I said.
No,
I
you
said
said
that
they have
I do not want to use that as a primary reason for why this article is on the warrant.
I'm asking for fair play for that, okay? I'm saying your vocational technical school has a long-term track record of being an excellent partner to this town. The town of Boston and its finance committee. Pardon?
I don't disagree.
Well, I'm asking you to show it, okay? On behalf, I'm not even gonna be there, but I'm saying I'm asking you to show it in like a quid pro quo, just a fairness aspect, All right, why would we be treated less when we've when we've been willing to do extra things? This creates an additional account at a desperate time to find additional accounts to save money to make improvements. All right, and it's a different function. It's limited in what it can be used. It can't be used for raises. No offense to the teachers, they can't ask for it. Money at the bargaining table, money from this account. There's no money in this at this point. We're making a commitment through my school committee to raise the money eventually to have some money to address the repairs that we know exist. This is only a sample of the repairs that are needed. The building is 65 years old, okay? It has multiple needs that exceed what we can address.
In a net sum, so if I were like to boil this down, are we giving you the ability to save an extra 5% of your budget each year?
At maximum.
At max?
Yeah, not every year.
That you don't have?
No, we don't have it, all right? And that's, you could say wishful thinking. That's too ambitious. That's not gonna happen, all right?
But this allows you each year to save up to that if you could.
They're not even gonna come anywhere close to that, okay? No, the school committee has voted a maximum in the account of 5%, not 5% every year.
Oh,
Yeah,
total?
the balance of that account can only be a maximum of 5% of their operating budget.
Okay.
And we took that action so that there was no concern that, wait a minute, it's too huge. That was done to address some of the concerns we heard.
Yes, understood.
If you get a donation, a cash donation right now, where does it go? What happens to it?
What's that question?
If you get a cash donation right now from an organization, what is the process? How do you receive that? Where does that go?
We say thank you, and we would utilize it for whatever purpose. For example, it might be a scholarship for students graduating to pursue their trade.
Right, so school committee has the ability to accept donations on behalf of the organization and set up a gift fund or set up a local grant fund, depending on the type, or set up a scholarship trust fund or whatever. And that's something that you currently do now. So I'm curious why this $30 donation is triggering the ask for a stabilization, which could equal up to 5% of your operating budget. I'm just not seeing a disconnect. I am seeing a disconnect between what the stated rationale is and what the conclusion is.
But we help with the disconnect. The $30 is a good faith donation to kick off the stabilization fund if the towns agree to do it. We simply said thank you. We weren't negative about it, and we also didn't say no thank you. We just it's in the business office in a folder to see whether or not the towns support this request. And we are very different feelings relative to the 13 towns that I've worked with for 32 years versus your perception of the lack of receptivity by these towns to support this account or even our budget.
So back to the first part of my question, when you get a cash donation, because I know you have, right? The banks give you money for the van operations each year, the wear and tear sorts of stuff. Where does that money go? Because you talked about seeking outside funding sources already. So what happens to it right now? Is it a miscellaneous receipt in your general fund, or do you set up individual donation funds already?
The revenue sheet of the FY26 budget, which you did approve, well, I believe you have, right? In the first actions taken tonight, there's a list of some of the donations that we use to offset the budget. They're right there on the green sheet.
So, but
most
right.
You mentioned the process. Sorry.
So Jeremy is asking about the process. Where that money comes in, what line item in your budget did that go to? And how does that get expended through your process?
Okay. Donations have a process where the school committee must accept them, right? And the school committee looks at the intent of the donor for the gift.
Yep.
For example, someone tried to donate 1,000 gallons of lead paint to us, okay? And so we rejected that donation. We know why they did that. They were looking for a tax write-off and some way to get rid of lead paint. That didn't make sense for us to accept the donation, so the school committee said, no, thank you.
Good job.
I'm specifically asking about cash donations.
We make a judgment, the school committee makes a determination of the acceptance of the donation. Now, the typical donation would be a car that's been damaged. All right, so a car is donated. The school committee might put the blue book value on that, so that, and then the vehicle is used in auto technology or collision repair as a teaching tool.
Yep.
That's a typical donation for us.
Can we talk about cash donations?
Yeah, because I want to know how it's recognized on your ledger right now. Because you're talking about going out and securing outside funding for specific capital projects or equipment or all these things that are not up for debate on whether they're needed or useful or good, right? That's not the question. The question is, if you receive cash donations right now, how are they recognized on your ledger and how are they restricted for use? And then how does that differ at all from what is being asked now? Why isn't the current system working well enough for you? Because if you have E&D, and then that has your operational overages, and then you have other accounts for outside funding that you treat similar to grants, right? Any sort of special revenue fund. Why this ask?
Donations traditionally come with an intention for how they would be used. By the way, if you wish to make a donation, we'd be glad to consider that as well. But I'm saying that so that the school committee looks at the donor's intention of the donation, and they consider it and make a judgment on it, right? We don't have a long list of people lining up with checkbooks to make donations, but usually, and it's not uncommon, the most recent donation I received is for a scholarship for a person who, a family member who lost their son, right? And so these are the donations you get. The budget list, you want to make a comment on that?
I'll make a comment just about these projects and how we're currently functioning. It was one of the other questions, but you know, as Doc is retiring here and I'm coming on as the new superintendent, Jeremy, I think you asked a question about why E&D doesn't continue or wouldn't suffice to do this. And you know, I look at it that we average about or 2.5%, so about 700,000 to 800,000 in E&D. We traditionally, just due to 10-year history, usually put 250,000 towards the offset. That leaves you 500,000 in there. I don't know about you, but me, you get lower than 500,000 and it starts to make me itch because that's emergency money for whatever happens. We just had our hot water heater just broke on us. Didn't break, we knew it was coming down to life. It was a great example. We went, we put it out to bid, came back at $180,000. We didn't get too much for that, so we went and saw if we could purchase the hot water heater directly. We were able to do that. We were able to secure that hot water heater for $66,000. Had it on the shelf, so to speak. Hot water heater this past week, we plan on doing it this summer, and it decided to let go earlier, but we had one on the shelf. We used our own in-house talent. It's an advantage we have, but we make the use of it. Sometimes I make the facilities manager a little sick to his stomach, but I said, we're doing it ourselves. So we pulled it out of there, got the old one out of the new one out of the shed. I think we're $6,000 in setup. So we wound up doing that project for 40%, 41% of what that bid was. I think we're out the door for about 73,000. You can't do things like that if you don't have a little bit of paper to play. You know, to spend 66,000 and go buy a hot water heater to give us the ability to go and change it ourselves. I don't know anybody that does that, even other Vogue schools that do that. But we have a long history of tackling things like that, like we're the homeowner, right, that doesn't want to pay the plumber, okay? I'm just looking at E&D typically at about 800,000. We typically put 250 towards the budget. That leaves you, maybe in a good year, you got 100 grand to play with. If I go down this list, the calf walk-in cooler, 125 grand. The foundation site work is about 80 grand. The paving that we need to do, that's 38 grand. And I keep going down and I'm saying, you know, we're going to need the ability to save a little money. It's never going to get, I don't believe I'm ever going to see 5% in there for 1.5 million. But we just need the ability to thoughtfully set aside some money so that we can keep plucking these things off the list and fixing them ourselves. If we don't have the stabilization, then we're basically left to whether or not you have a chance, a healthy E&D that year or not a healthy E&D. And if you don't have it, then you go without. And that's pretty much how we have been operating. That when we have a healthy E&D, we look at projects we can do, we tackle them. Right, we do have a very well thought out 10-year capital plan, but you know, we're also very mindful of things that are coming to end of life and so forth, and we thoughtfully will reprioritize those. both by, urgency, but also by the ability to pay for those projects. So that's how it differs a little from E&D. E&D is, I don't want to say it's not chance, but it's rare that you actually have leftovers in there that beyond what you should be saving for emergency to really do something substantial. We're hoping that we could set this up so that with the concerns in mind, that it doesn't go to, above 5%, that it doesn't, another thing was, well, you could put it in the line and come back next year and ask us for, $100,000 to put into the account. In my opinion, that would be, suicide of sorts. You wouldn't do that because you run the risk of not getting your budget passed because you wanted to get aggressive with trying to fund your stabilization. So I think it has all of those checks and balances in it. And I think what Doc has been saying repeatedly here is that we're not new to you guys. You know who we are and how we've operated. We've kept the very old building very nice and up to speed. And we, here's another thing. Here's how else you fund them. You come back next year with a warrant article for a phone system and a heater, or a fire panel and things like that. We haven't done that though. But it's just not what we've done.
Yep.
Right. In fact, 21 years, we've asked twice to borrow money, to bond, to make repairs. And I think only once, if I can remember better than me, a dump truck about 22 years ago.
This is special warrant articles.
Right, but
one time.
That's the only other way you would do these, is to come with special warrant articles, and we've never done that. We've shown you that we take care of our place, but we do need a little bit of ability to save and continue doing that. Maybe in the last 20 years, things were a little easier to do, but with cost escalation being what they are, a couple $100,000 does not go very far. And so, most of the items on this list are in that range. So we're just asking for the ability to be able to continue to mind our own business and take care of our own place without coming with special warrant articles or things like that. That's how I see it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have one final question, then I'll leave the points out. So, you're talking about putting, money from your E&D at the end of the year into stabilization. When, as the town functions, if we wanted to access that money, we would just keep it in free cash and let it roll over. So, I'm not sure why, if you had excess E&D, you wouldn't, let it roll over and be recertified the next year. But I guess my principal question is, you're talking about these additional projects that require additional funding. But setting up a stabilization account doesn't actually create any funding for you. You talked about how your cash donations are recognized in the ledger elsewhere, so that's not a new funding stream for you. You can just transfer from E&D at the end of the year to stabilization, so that's not a funding stream. That's money you're going to have anyway. So is it your anticipation? You said you won't, but is it your anticipation to come back with an assessment for towns on each individual year to fund this stabilization? Because I don't see how creating this stabilization fund allows you to do anything more than you already are.
I would think the primary approach to fund this comes from pursuing donors to a greater extent, to indicate to major corporate donors that the towns have stood by us. They've created the support to a stabilization fund. Would you be kind enough to make a donation to it rather than ask for assessments? That would be the approach. By the way, just saying, in 32 years, we've never come back to the towns and asked for any money, any additional money over that which was approved.
Is there a mechanism? Is there a mechanism to put in place? And here's where I have complete ignorance of what is possible. To put in place funding restrictions to only those sources of funding. I don't know the legalities or the operational.
That exists in the guidelines for the state. It's defined as capital, but whatever is considered to be capital.
I'm saying more of this stabilization account is defined in a way that it can only be funded through outside grants in some way. Part of my other concern is we do have a multitude of other towns to deal with. And we could be beholden to the whims, and we typically are, right? Beholden to the other whims of all the other towns of if we fall in the minority, then we just have to fall in line. right? So there are concerns around some of those details that do not play into decisions we may make for the other neighbors across the street.
But you made a commitment, owning some 50% of the other regional system. In our case, you own 6%, less than 6%. So the other towns are paying 94%, or they have 94% ownership.
Yep.
And they're paying the bill reflective of the 94%. You don't have that outside of us.
Understood? All right,
I mean, it seems to me that there's obviously a need for ongoing maintenance for our schools, right? On both parts, right? There's no question that we need to do that, so that we're not coming with warrant articles for ongoing maintenance. And the question to me is really like, what's the vehicle? What's the most efficient vehicle to do that? Versus, you know, is it this account versus another account? Is it, in a very basic way, do you put it in your checking account, do you put it in your savings account? And do you have two accounts to do that? And I think the need is clear. The need for ongoing maintenance for our facilities is clear. The question is really, and I think from the town standpoint, at least from my standpoint, it's not a question of your intent. Because at least my feeling is that the intent is in the right place. The question is more around the logistics around how to do this versus the intent. So I hope you come across, at least from my standpoint, that the intent is in the right place. It's more a question of logistics. And what's the most efficient way to do that? Versus the need.
I agree with most of your statement. What I want to add to that is we shouldn't take away any avenue to save money, okay? If there's 2 ways to save money, great. If you can get 3 ways to save money, even better. If there's 4 ways to save money, put it aside, even better. I'm in favor of this. I do not want to tie their hands in the ability to manage their money, and quite frankly, 5%, that's called squirreling it away. That's not being over excessive. It's not being greedy. It's just another little way to go, okay, I can save a little here. I can save a little there.
all right, I'm gonna call for it, so we had just started in discussion, when it got brought up, so can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 27 of the BVT stabilization fund?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any other further discussion of points that weren't already brought up or questions that need to be asked that weren't already answered?
I just have a question for our friends across the street here. And how do you guys use those two funds differently?
Which two funds?
E&D and stabilization.
E&D is we use to appropriate to the operational budget to offset the assessments to the towns. The stabilization, we have never appropriated money into it at all. We just had money coming from MSBA. It was set aside and we're using it now for capital projects. We've never included it as part of our operational budget as an assessment or, had a line item to appropriate. Quite honestly, I think we'd like to, but there's limited funds that are coming our way from the two towns, so there's really not additional money just sitting there.
And I can add, we also have the opportunity for revolving account for school choice. And sometimes when we might have a capital need, a smaller one, and we talk about in our presentation what we've worked on over the years, it often will come out of that, which they don't have a school choice account.
We do not have school choice.
Right. All right, any other further questions? All right, roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendelia, aye.
Sientra, aye.
Earl, aye.
Haddad, aye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
All those opposed? Craig or nay? Motion passes.
Thank you for the reconsideration on behalf of my students.
All right. Let's see, what's the most ideal? So,
Good to see you.
do you have an article on you?
We do.
Which one? Article 18. Article 18? All right, why don't you guys go next?
Thank you. Please let me know. I'll be there.
All in luck.
Me.
All right, so Article 18, moving forward, I guess let's do it in this sort of operating model. We will do the motion and we'll have all the discussion and the discussion part of the motion. So again, can I get a motion to recommend that the vote to recommend to the town to support Article 18, solid waste and recycling budget?
What, can we start again on that? What is the motion?
Can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 18, the solid waste, he took away the.
And recycling budget.
And recycling budget.
So moved.
Second.
So, discussion. Would you like to describe the article to?
This is a continuation of our enterprise account. This is totally funded by the participating subscribers. And this is merely an account to hold that money separate from other monies that the town collects to pay the bills that the trash program has to pay during the course of the year. We have a trucking fee, we have hobby, we have wheelabrator to dispose of the trash. We have the mailing of the bills with Kelly Ryan. So just kind of holds us accountable to spend only what's available.
Great.
So can you, a year or so ago, we took the towns, because the ratepayers had been paying for the town's trash services for say, this building and the other, and we pulled that out, right?
Correct.
And so I'm just curious, what was that dollar amount that the town?
The dollar amount was, fiscal year 2025 was 18.7. And for this year, it's 19,550. Now, after the enterprise account was established at town meeting, it was never funded. So this is really gonna be the first year that that account is actually gonna hold money in it. So it's been a process to get this going and to try to do it accurately.
Yeah.
So that's where we are today.
And just out of curiosity, what's the impact of the ratepayer this year versus last year?
It's going up 5.5%.
We do have a growing senior population, and the seniors get it at half rate. So the standard payers are helping to shoulder some of that burden.
Hopefully they're generating less trash too.
I'd like to add that this senior appreciates that.
It's kind of twofold, and we discussed this at our last Board of Health meeting, that maybe not everyone is aware. It's not only a show of respect to our senior population, but it's presumed that they generate less trash. So there's less expense in servicing that home.
Jeremy, did you have anything that you wanted to add in regards to the details around the article?
Yep, 2 quick points. One, like Alan had said, this is the first year they're operating, so they don't have any safety net. There's no fund equity. There's no, free cash for them, so to speak, within this fund. So Jack and I spoke as we get close to the end of fiscal 26, if, for whatever reason, receipts are, lagging and we don't want to get dinged on free cash, we can move some stuff to the general fund to help it out over the course of a single fiscal year, which is something that we were implicitly doing when it was part of the general fund for every year prior. And the converse of that is, as the fund builds up, presumably small amounts of profit each year, that would then insulate against the need to do that in the future, should there be some sort of shock. And then it also gives the board the ability to, appropriate from that balance and make year-over-year increases less than they otherwise would have been. So we'll address that as the fund has some more experience to be able to talk about. And I had spoken with the Board of Health right when I started that oftentimes enterprise funds have what's called an indirect cost associated to them, right? Because Jack McClellan is administering the program and his salary is fully paid for out of taxpayer funds, whereas we would want some of the ratepayer funds to support that. So after 3 years, don't cut their legs out from underneath them, but after 3 years, we'll come back and reevaluate the fund and say, should we be assessing an indirect cost to the fund to support the general fund for their support of the enterprise fund? We're not there yet. Just wanted to preface the conversation.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment as chairman of the Board of Water Commissioners? Sure. This is exactly similar to the fact that we have the town share of the water in the town operating budget and the ratepayer share in our enterprise fund. And I salute these guys because I was encouraging them 5 and 6 years ago to do this, as Alan knows. But it's identical to what we're doing in water. And our balance enables us to, the hotel keeps jacking our fee up through the roof every 5 seconds. It has paid for the 4 water main breaks without impacting the ratepayers with our reserve that we built up. And that was our goal, was to get into the enterprise fund. And those who have long memories, like Mr. Mendelia, will remember me standing up and screaming at town meetings, why the hell am I, a non-water customer, paying for people who have well? Now that I'm on the system, that's no longer the case. And I think this is an excellent idea. And I think that the ratepayers of the trash fee will recognize that.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
Well, again, I'd just like to add, I think this section of the Board of Health is doing a great job with the trash. Trash is a never-ending problem, not only in the town of Mendon, but throughout the country and the world. And you've got to be creative on how you deal with it. And obviously, we don't want to tax our seniors out of this town or overburden the younger generations of this town and make this town unaffordable to live in. So I think they're doing their due diligence for the people of this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. All right, I'm gonna call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote. You gotta do it. Sorry.
Aye. Not everybody knows.
Cantor, aye.
Hodgins, aye.
Sorry.
Jack, can you repeat that, please?
Hodgins, aye.
Zamuto, aye.
Gregor, aye. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Chief?
So the first one is the garage doors. We had the same maintenance company coming through at one point, doing all the maintenance, and we weren't getting the right answers when there was issues with the doors, and had someone else come in and pointed out that our doors are on their very last leg. Actually, one of them broke yesterday, so Jeremy, I need to talk to you tomorrow. So that's what this one's for, to replace all the garage doors. They were original with the station when it was built as a construction company in 2001.
Yep.
Lowest quality. They're like R4 rated. The new ones will be R18.6. So they'll be a little better efficiencies. We just need to get ahead of that so we can actually get out of the station if we need to.
Great. I buffed my own operating model here. Can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 13, the replacement of the fire station garage doors?
So moved.
Second.
All right, further discussion. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
That's about it. Pretty straightforward there.
Jeremy, did you have anything on top of that you wanted to add?
3 quick things. One, this has been on the capital improvement working group's radar. Much of this write-up is from stuff already written, discussed, and voted on, and it's been prioritized by the committee. Second is I'm hopeful, I have to speak with the moderator, but I'm hopeful we'll have a substantial consent agenda. And my plan is to add this to it. And lastly, I'll bring it up as folks would like, or as we hit each one. But we are starting this town meeting with $414,000 in free cash, and then all of the items here tonight that we'll discuss total 290. So we would end town meeting with $123,000 still left over in free cash, which, as this committee knows, as recently as just a handful of years ago, we would end with $0 and $3,000 in free cash. So it's less than we would end with at the end of fiscal 24, but still a really healthy amount to roll into our next certification of free cash.
Great. Any other questions, comments? All right, take a vote. All those in favor?
Mendeleer, aye.
Curl, aye.
Cantor, aye.
Hammond, aye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. Great.
Sorry, these fire ones are not together because, oh, well, I'll wait till the motion and discussion before I get into it.
All right, can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 28, the Fire Department SCBA Fund?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Jeremy or Chief, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, I'll go through the procedural and then he'll go through the technical. So this is a long-term, sort of known expense we're going to have because of replacement schedules. So rather than come up with $250,000 all at once, this article is the first year setting aside $50,000 into a fund, and we'll do that for 5 straight years. And because it's kind of a different ask rather than saying money to buy stuff right now, I didn't put it on the consent agenda so we could discuss it if folks wanted to. I will say when I was in Attleboro, we had the same process, and we held back, $50,000, $60,000 each year for all 3 years I was there, just because fire departments know they're going to have to replace this on a regular basis. So, Chief, if you want to talk about the need.
So these are our breathing apparatus when we go into a hazardous condition. That's where we breathe the air through. The cylinders, which is one component of it, they have a end of life after 15 years. So we'd have to replace those after 15 years. It's recommended to replace the frames between 10 and 15 years. So that's kind of the time frame for that. Ours are in decent condition right now. They're checked every year, but when they start to deteriorate, they tend to go rather quickly. So,
how old are they right now?
They were purchased in 2017.
You do it all at once, or do you have like a rotating like you?
It's best to do it all at once, so they're all in the same standard. Because if not, there's little differences between each aircraft would be a different standard. So there's different alarms, different features. So standardization,
NFPA, like some new nuance every year.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions, 3 questions, I guess. Is there a plan to increase the number of units that you have now in this fund?
No, level funded for the number of units. Yeah.
Okay. Is there an inflation factor built into this? Is that the 250 cost this year versus what it would be in 5 years?
So this was a number I put in there, I want to say 23, just kind of a ballpark number. It should be fairly close to what it is, but who knows what the prices will go. I heard.
It's a good question, Nick. So like in years 4 and 5, we may be asking for $60,000 instead of 50. It is an estimate right now. It's not like we have a hard purchasing contract or anything. So it is subject to change.
Okay. And in the bizarre world that we saved too much and these things came in at 200,000 versus 250,000, what would happen to the extra 50,000 that's in the fund?
We've got about 20 or so funds where that is the case right now. And then so what is going to happen with them at special town meeting in the fall, which will happen in the future should that happen, is I would just ask town meeting to vote to close those funds and return it to free cash. So the funds would be restricted for whatever the use is. And then if we no longer have a need for that restricted use, we would just vote it to go back to free cash and then appropriate it to something new, or vote it directly to say there's $49,000 left. We additionally authorize the chief to go buy, whatever it is the department needs at the time.
Right, but it would be based on the kind of the nature of this fund.
It would require an additional town meeting vote to increase the
Scope.
specificity. Yes, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Okay.
So if I may to just get a little clarification, of my understanding of this fund. Basically, to put it in caveman terms, it's another mechanism to save up money for a specific item, correct?
So it would be one big chunk of money at a time, so.
It doesn't drop the free cash at the end of the fiscal year, because it's a special article.
Sounds like a great idea to me.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor?
Mendeley, aye.
Currently.
Sientra, aye.
Had it, I.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Krager, aye. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Sure.
Sherry, great. All right. All right. Can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 19, the valuation account?
So moved.
Okay. Discussion. Sherry, do you want to, or
I'm going
Kevin?
to refer to my board.
She kicked it up to the board member who was dumb enough to show up. I'd like to kind of address the two articles together if possible, but I'll focus on 19.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, every 5th year, the Department of Revenue does what's called a recertification. By law, we revalue every year to 100% full and fair market value. Recertification is where the DOR literally comes in and crawls into your body and makes you life living hell, because in addition to having to approve every document every year, this time they rifle through the documents and get behind everything. I'm in a recert year right in fiscal 26 over in Holliston. It is a unique experience if you haven't done it before. And so what happens is you typically rely more on a consultant to help wade through the voluminous inspection that the DOR does every 5th year, which is basically to make sure that they are certifying or recertifying that everything is kosher in the town. There's public hearings, unlike the current process now where you vote on a tax classification hearing in the fall, and surprise, you get your new assessment with your bill. There are public hearings to go through the new assessments. There are 2 sets of public hearings where people go. So it's probably about triple the amount of work in a given year. And you rely heavily on outsiders to help you get all that work done, especially in a one-person department. So just as Jeremy mentioned with regarding the breathing apparatus, you don't want to come to the town every 5th year and say, we need $50,000 to get through this process. So what you do is, because the money is not spent in a given fiscal year, but piled over the years, every year we traditionally ask for money to go in the valuation account. And then when you hit your 5th year, the money's all there. And Jeremy had asked a question of the board, and I'm embarrassed that I did not remember the answer. But as I told Sherry this week, I woke up at 2 in the morning one night last week and remembered it. And the reason you don't put it in the operating budget, Jeremy, is because if you don't spend it, it drops to free cash on June 30th. So you want it in a special article so it can stay there every year. So that's the reason why there have been special articles forever.
Excellent.
So that's the basic thing. It's just like it. You don't want to upset that operating budget of the town. You don't want a special article coming once every 5 years. That's a big sum of money. This is the same, basically, as long as I've been on the board, which is getting close to, I think, 12 years. I can't even remember. It's been the same amount in each article every year, and it just evens it out over time. So that's what the valuation account is. I'll talk about Article 20 when you get to Article 20.
That sounds like a fantastic method to save and be prepared in another vehicle for saving money, especially when we can all collaboratively only impact and work together as one united front to make sure we're doing the right things for ourselves. So I think it's a great approach.
And I agree, I think cooperation among boards is paramount.
Absolutely.
Hey, Jeremy, I had a question. Where does all this money go? Like, where is it sitting? Are we getting interest on this? Like, where is this money?
Yep. So all of this is budgetary. So we are talking about our general ledger, about our budget and our ability to spend that money and how it comports with municipal finance law. Where the actual dollars sit is more of kind of a balance sheet and a treasury question. So when we pass a $24 million budget in May and then have the budgetary authority to spend that on July 1, it's not like the town has a checking account with $24 million in it, right? Because taxes come in throughout the year. So it's up to the treasurer to make sure that when I approve something to be spent from our budget line, that there's money in the checking account to make sure those checks clear. That's kind of the general frame. So where it sits on a day-to-day basis, we have a number of different vehicles. We've got just our general checking account. We've got a savings account, which generates our high yield interest. We're in some municipal trusts that are run by state level agencies. We have some more of our other trust funds that are invested we have an investment policy as a town. So they're invested consistent with that, generating, you hope to generate a little bit better of a return. And that's something that the previous finance director really harped on and really focused on. So that's why, in addition to excellent market conditions, investment income for the town has shot up over the last handful of years. So we're not sitting, we don't have this $19,800 in the bank on day one, but the budget allows us to say we're able to spend it, and then it's up to Tracy Accardi to make sure the check's clear.
If I can make one other comment, if at the end of the 5-year process, the amount needed is less than the amount of the articles, it doesn't get spent, and then you you rescind that article at a future town meeting and the money returns to the account.
So that is another benefit of this vehicle and this method is we can use that cash to generate revenue through investments and other.
Yeah, it also enables the town to do a bid as you get towards that 5th year, knowing the money's there.
Yeah. Great. All right, any other comments or questions? I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, roll call vote, please.
Mendeleer, aye.
Carl, I.
Leandro, aye.
And then
Hodgins, aye.
Zabuto, aye.
Gregor, on. Great. All right, and I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town Article 20, the cyclical inspection account.
So moved.
second.
Great. Any discussion? Okay, would you like to take it away?
Yeah, this is slightly different. The Department of Revenue mandates that we inspect every property physically at least once every 10 years. This is in addition to the normal inspections that go on with building permits that you inspect. You look at new growth. You look at them when properties are sold to make sure you're not missing anything. But the cyclical is basically they want you to make sure that you're looking at 1/10 of the properties every year. And there are a couple of ways of doing it. You can, this being a smaller town, you can save up a couple of years and then send the person out. And the Department of Revenue, doesn't care as long as when you hit that research year, your numbers are where they should be. So you can do the money every year and then send somebody out like once every 3 years or once every 5 years and get it done in time with the recertification. In a bigger town, you're just doing that all the time.
Yep.
So this is, again, putting the money in a special article so that if you want to wait a year or two, quite honestly, with smaller towns, sometimes it's hard to get a vendor to help you do that until you have a certain number of properties, which makes it attractive enough for them to do it. And just for the history of that, up until about, I'm going to say 9 years ago, all 3 board members received a stipend and we were the property inspectors. And we reached the point where all of us, well, 2 of the 3 of us were full-time assessors in other towns, which is a good thing for the board. And so we voted, I think it's more like at least 7 years ago, we lowered our stipends and put that money to pay the inspector every year, and that's really what that money is. So the property's still getting inspected, we just gave up our jobs doing it. Although at a pinch, such as for sales or new growth, we certainly step in, and we still go out for all abatement inspections, we look at the property. But again, it's just, again, doing the money every year as opposed to one big hit.
So Kevin, sorry about it. So I remembered why I had that line in Article 19 then. So in Article 19, the 19,800, that's for costs in between the cyclical inspection program. So that 19,800 is getting spent on a yearly basis within a fiscal year, right?
It can be, but most of the time it is saved until you get closer to the recertification year. Because I'll tell you right now, I just got my bids back or returned yesterday. I'm looking at $60,000 expense from 2 vendors for my research. And I mean, there's no way I could ask the town for 60 grand. So we've been doing the same process, taking a little every year, so the money's there. So that's really why it's in a special article. It could be spent, or parts of it in a given year, depending on what the Department of Revenue asked for, but primarily you tend to build it up till you hit that research year.
Got it. Thank you. And just for everyone's reminder, it being in an article fund allows it to, transfer fiscal years. It can go on until the project's completed or runs out of money. We don't have those 630 considerations. And second, both of these I have on the consent agenda because this is something that town meeting sees and funds every year.
Yes, and there's usually no debate on them.
I just have a question, just my own knowledge around, are towns able to use kind of insurance aerials for this type of revaluation?
They're not called insurance aerials. We just call them aerial photography. Although in the last couple of years, my own insurance company, I
work for an insurance company.
Yeah, well, on the way here, I just signed a contract for 20 grand to have a new roof put on because my insurance company used the same software where we used to tell me I needed a new roof, and if I don't put it on, they won't insure me. So yeah, it is the same.
Yeah, so I mean, can we do certain recertifications or reevaluations based on that type of photography?
The Department of Revenue more and more is allowing that for external only, but they still require internal inspections of properties. And that can't be done right now with the aerial photography. What the aerial photography is most useful for, to be honest with you, is any building permit related to the exterior of a property, adding a room, adding a deck. The old days, you'd go out and say, gee, they took out a building permit last November, it's now spring, they ought to be done, and you drive out and look at it, and they haven't started. This way, every time the aerial photography is revved, which is 3 times a year in this area, they're about to load up April City Day. You just go out, I've got a list for instance in my town, I've got a list of 30 exterior building permits. I'm just dying to go because they're gonna save me countless visits to that property, and then I concentrate my time on the interior. So yeah, we are using the same photography. The Department of Revenue realizes that it's actually getting harder and harder to find people in our field, which is a whole separate issue. I've been unable to replace her for 10 months in Holliston. And in fact, I'm donating because she's working part-time for me to help out. You have aerial photography on Holliston's dime right now.
Right.
To help her, which I know Jeremy doesn't like me doing. And I don't know.
I wouldn't like it if I was I wouldn't like it if I was Holliston, and I wouldn't like it if we were doing that for someone else. But if Holliston's going to do it for us, I'm not going to interrupt.
Actually, Holliston is well aware of it because she's bailing us out by coming in on Fridays. So it's part of her thing. But yeah, we do use that software, we just can't use it here. I will tell you that as, if you know what LiDAR is, LiDAR is now on iPads and iPhones. The software doesn't exist yet to do the interior of a house. They're getting there, but it's probably gonna be another 10 years. And I think those in the professional will be walking around and doing the entire shot of a house with an iPhone and doing the exterior with an arrow. What they are doing right now, and I just saw it demonstrated by my roofing company, they can match, there's a 3D application, it's $25 a house though. You take photos of the 4 sides of the house, it lines up with the aerial photo, and they will give you a 3D view of the house within like 5 minutes for $25, which blew my mind today because I wish it was cheaper. But I would say technology-wise, 10, 15 years maybe, we're getting there. But we do use the exterior all the time, and I will tell you, in my town, it saved us from hiring a person. And for exactly about 10 grand a year, we have no benefits and no retirement costs. And obviously no salary costs, but that was the trade-off.
All right, any other questions or comments for the article? All right, all those in favor?
Mendeleev, aye.
Curl, aye.
Cantor, aye.
Had that eye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye.
Just like to offer, if any of you folks on the finance committee ever have questions about how the whole annual evaluation process works, Sherry or I or Ken O'Brien, although he tends to go longer than I do, we're happy to come in and give you, like a 15, 20-minute tutorial on the process. Because I find, at least with the general public, has no clue. They just come in and say, you're valuing my house too much. And typically, we're able to prove to them not only are we not, but they're in the middle of the pack. So, I'd be happy to come in at some time and give you a very layman's overview of how the process works. I think it's important.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we've made Marissa wait long enough.
I've learned a lot, so I'm like, wow, that's new. Okay, come on up, does that work?
Yep.
You also have John Dudley online to talk about Chapter 90. Just, I'm not sure if you noticed that.
You wanna,
Oh, I did not notice that, sorry.
you wanna do that?
I say
Yeah.
that because this should take 5 minutes as opposed to.
All right, yeah, all right,
That's a
why
lot,
don't we do that?
I
one?
would do that.
Yeah.
You owe me, John.
John, feel free to stay and listen to the Mercer one though.
No, thank you.
And I apologize. There's actually a snow and ice one too, so it may take 8 minutes instead of 5. But
All right. Can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town Article 4 acceptance of Chapter 90 funds?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Either John or Jeremy, feel free to take it away.
Yep. So Chapter 90 is the part of MGL that funds road repair and replacement in localities. There's a formula. I highlighted it here. A little more than, or almost 60% based on road mileage and then population and employment. There's $200 million in the fund set by the legislature. The governor filed a bond bill to borrow an additional 1.5 billion, which would increase the allocation from 200 to 300 million, but it would be based solely on road miles for that additional $100 million. So that helps places like Mendon and some rural towns out west who don't have necessarily the population, but have a lot of roads. So that would bring our apportionment up for fiscal 26, should that bond bill pass, to $459,000, up roughly about $175,000 from prior fiscal years, from the prior fiscal year.
Great. Any other questions or comments? All right, take a roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendeleev, aye.
Curl, aye.
Cantor, aye.
Had that eye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. All right, can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town Article 12, snow and ice removal deficit?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, so we had a pretty busy winter. John well, you all know that. John can talk about that. So we have a deficit. And so let me back up a little bit. Snow and ice removal line is the only line which municipalities can run a deficit on within a current fiscal year, so long as they budget an equal or greater amount that they budgeted the year before. So we ran about a $92,000 deficit in the fund, attributable almost entirely to salt. And we just added 600, John just texted me earlier in this meeting, we added $624 worth of overtime because we had a salt this past weekend. So I thought I had a solid number for you all, and then we added to it. So like I said at the beginning of the meeting, the $414,000 in free cash, and then we end up with 122,000 at the end. So the 93,334 that is attributable snow and ice deficit is included in that.
Sorry, the final end of free cash at 100 and change includes removing the 93 and change for the deficit spending.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, roll call vote. All those in favor?
I just want to acknowledge the work that the highway department did on snow and ice removal this year. There was a lot of those borderline things that, you know, you have salt and then you have to come in and plow, and it seemed that it snowed on weekends and overnight a bunch. So this was a winter unlike ones in recent memory for the department.
Agreed. Thank you, John. All right, roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendonma.
Pietro,
Had an eye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. Great. That's it for highway?
Yep.
All right, where's the?
Sure.
Only get up and down twice.
I'm gonna use up all those options then. Wait, you're gonna have to stay here the rest of the night though.
No, I leave my side here.
All right, so I'm sure you are prepared with a significant presentation to talk with us in great detail.
We have whatever you need.
So hold on. We'll do this, all right. We've got to vote each one individually. So can I get a vote? Motion to vote to recommend to the town, Article 21, the MURSD roof debt authorization.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so discussion. I know I have personally been a part of many, many minutes and hours of detailed discussion. I do not personally need more information, but I want to make sure that those on the finance committee have everything that they need, and hopefully been part of, there are multi-board meetings and there's been plenty of other meetings where this information has been provided. So I appreciate all of the transparency and details and all the questions that have been asked so far. But I do want to, if we have an opportunity to save both time and your voice, I'm happy to do so if the finance committee does not feel they need any more information. So I will let you do with that as you wish. We can have the finance committee just ask questions, and if there are none, you can feel free to tell us whatever you'd like to tell us.
Okay.
But I want to leave this a little bit open and not feel like you have to do a full breadth of presentation again. So.
And we are on a roadshow, and I never mind any opportunity to, I haven't gotten it under a half an hour yet, but you know,
Yeah.
we just did, we were just in Upton just about an hour ago and, you know, went through, and it's always good to be able to give highlights because every meeting we have, but I don't need to do all of that. But I'll start with this. We brought the flyer in case you haven't seen it, because we had it just more in electronic form. And sometimes that can be helpful. Good. Maybe I'll do just a little bit of an overview, and then if we could jump into any questions that you have, and then I can go into the presentation to answer. Just as a reminder, and I know some people watch this as well, we have 3 projects that are coming forward. We have the roof project at Nipmuc, we have the facilities project, which impacts all of the schools, and we have the fields and grounds project, which impacts Misco Hill and Nipmuc. And I know I do want to give a couple updates related to the fields and a couple of things that have come up for some questions, which I think might be helpful.
So let's start with the roof, because that's technically we're in the discussion for that specific.
Do you want me to just focus on that one then?
Yeah, please.
Perfect, yep. A little background on the roof. We were fortunate to be accepted into the MSBA. Same thing with BBT. They were accepted into it as well. It's an accelerated repair program. We only do it now every 2 years. And they had stopped it right after COVID, but we were fortunate when they opened it up that it was good timing for us because we qualified for our roof because it had to be over 25 years old and our roof is, where are we at now? 29, I'm losing all my numbers today. 29 years old. One thing to speak of the roof at Nipmuc is in all the presentations, just so you know, it's on our website. And if you ever need me to project something, we can try to do that. But we have pictures that show when you walk in the back door, anytime we have rain, I'll run into a bucket in the first hallway. Right off that hallway is the music room. And we have I don't know what it's called, but a contraption from the ceiling that funnels water out into a bucket in the middle of our music room. When I come around the corner and go into the main office, I took pictures recently of tiles that are up there that just got damaged. We replaced them a lot in order to not have too many damaged tiles. But in that main portion of the building, that's where we have the roof is leaking. And then I tell the story that I wish I had a video of it to show, but one day I'm walking around and I go down the social studies hallway, bucket, 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 pouring through the grates. Not just the drip, drip, drip that you might get, like pouring down the hallway. I couldn't believe it. Those are the kind of stories just so people understand what it is. But with the roof, we will be getting 52.26% reimbursement on that. And one thing we'd like to talk about and want to be emphasized is that with this program, it needs to pass at both town meetings and it has to pass at both ballots. Otherwise, we're kicked out of this program, have to reapply 2 more years. Now we're in 30 to 31-year-old roof that's still leaking more buckets. A couple other things we'd like to emphasize. I know at one of the meetings you were asking about like the size of the roof. We did put up a new image that might show people to see like how massive the roof actually is with the shingles, and we did some drone footage, so we have that to show that. A roof will typically, I mean, I know everyone in the room probably knows this, lasts like 20 to 30 years, but we're at that mark right there. It also, we did.
Was the per square foot cost of asphalt shingles that was?
Yeah, I think we have it in the details, yep. And I think he has it like noted in the details of that. I can pull that up. We have the roof membrane that is part of the project as well, which will be reimbursed. But the third part, the HVAC and the air handlers that are all over the building, that's not part of the reimbursable portion of MSBA, but we wouldn't go and replace the roof, just like BVT is doing the same thing, and then not have the air handlers and HVAC replaced. We wouldn't put 30-year-old back up there, that wouldn't make any sense. So that's part of it. So with the total cost estimate, it's estimated to be a little over 10 million minus the 52.26%.
Yeah, asphalt shingles is 61,000 square feet, and then the membrane is another 25,000 square feet.
Yeah, so he did it, so we would have that. And the total net cost estimated is a little over 6 million for that roof project.
After reimbursement.
Yeah, after reimbursement amongst the two towns. So that's money.
Great.
Nipmuc roof overview.
Awesome. And the calculator that's on your site reflects these numbers?
Yes.
Yeah.
The calculator on the site reflects after reimbursement.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And you can do it for each of the projects too, if people are looking to see the difference.
Yeah, I like the ability to sort of pick and choose if you were supportive of
Not
all of them.
Yeah.
And all those additional oversights are required because of the money that the state's getting, right?
Yes,
yes.
Yeah. There's lots of things you've got to do.
A lot of extra rules, yeah.
That's what's really killing it.
I wanted to see
You don't really need all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and some of the costs, and even the contract that you have to sign, which.
It's on the Mercer website, so.
Pretty much driven by that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that was driving above. Yeah, and now I've looked at this since we talked.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Is there a contingency if, once the roof is in process of being replaced, and you pull the shingles off and the sub base
Yes, if we have to replace it. We know that there's gonna be some plywood.
I would think so.
Yeah.
From the
just
description that
continue
you
to
said, I'm sure there's gonna be some found,
Yeah,
water damage to subsurface.
yeah. Yeah, especially on the flat part. The shingles, a little bit, I think, in a couple of the wings, but I think most of that's probably okay, but that flat surface.
Just sit there and suck it up.
Flat, that's a good idea. Wasn't needed.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay. Do roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendeleer, aye.
Sinatra, aye.
And I,
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. Great. All right, so making a motion to vote to recommend to the town article, this is 22, the facilities debt authorization.
second.
All right, discussion. So we'll focus on facilities.
All right. So for the facilities, on here, you can see the overview for all the different aspects. I'll just do a very quick overview, but I can answer any questions as you go through.
I think we saw this.
Did you see all of
I
it?
think we saw all this.
Did I? Okay.
I've personally seen all of it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to make you stay too late, but I'm also. All right, it's all good. Just as, I'll just talk about this one slide. Sound good? All right, that way it's on people here, yeah. All 4 schools, we're looking at the building management system, which is the brains of the schools, and they're coming in and all those systems. Key card access system is really important for security in order to control the single access to the buildings. Our paging and timekeeping systems. The paging system is also for safety and security and came up in our Homeland Security Assessment. At Nipmuc, we're looking to replace the Cat 5 cabling. That's from 1996, and we have a lot of systems that are not working now with it.
Sorry.
Yep.
This is separate and distinct from what the police need at NISCO, right?
Yeah, they have communication issues there. That's not.
That has nothing to do with us.
No, that's something different. Yeah. Good question.
If I can add about MISCO, about police communications, we applied for a $164,000 grant from the state to fix that issue, and we're granted about 150 something thousand. So in the next year or so, we should be able to correct those communication issues with some more repeaters.
And that doesn't help with any of this stuff.
No, they are separate and distinct issues.
Oh,
They're both a problem.
Yeah, that's also in the larger list, yes.
Yeah,
thank you. The flooring, we've already started to do some replacement with grants of our carpets and flooring, and it's making a big difference. But this building, for people who don't recall, it was built in 1958, entered its 65-year-old building, even though it went for a renovation in 1997. The auditorium, so I'm sorry, that was at, I was talking about MISCO when we talked about that. Back to Nipmuc, flooring, it's in the classrooms, but also in the auditorium seats along with the flooring. There's images that you'll see, there's giant rips in the carpet right when you walk in, and a lot of broken seats in the auditorium, and we need to replace all that. At MISCO, we talked a little bit about the transformer, the oil-filled transformer from 1958, replacing that. It's linked to the switch that if we turn it off, the power will go out. This is our critical failure that is a big concern is along the electrical system. And then the generator, if we have a generator, we'd be able to have this be as an emergency facility. And also it's pitch black and power goes out a lot coming in from both towns at MISCO, and it's actually an issue pretty regularly for us. The bathrooms were built for elementary. We have middle schoolers, and it would be replacing all the fixtures that are too low to the ground. We have one set of lockers in the back of the building, super rusted, don't look great. You've seen it, and that was not done in the renovation. That would be replaced. Our 5th graders would be using those and continue. I was talking about MISCO. We've done some of the flooring and the carpets and tiles there. And just as a reminder, we had the Habib and Associates had done done this facilities assessment of all of our facilities in our fields. They had come up with about 90 million of different scopes of work. And then with the capital committee, we prioritized them into this, a third of that amount that's split across all of these. Well, that's as fast as I've done it. This is good practice. But you've heard it. You've heard it.
Yeah, right, so I guess just for the record, right, we are not just glossing over this, right? There has been multi-board meetings where this was all discussed in great detail. There were multiple other school committee meetings of which this presentation was highlighted at different levels of depth. The select board meeting was just done last week, and this was gone into in great detail. So this is not a glossing over of this for the record. This is simply a recognition that a lot of pre-communication has been done about this coming into this, so.
And it's all on the website. There's more there than you could ever want to know.
So I have a few questions on this. It seems like that there's some items that are kind of replacement, end of life. And there are other items that are maintenance items that maybe haven't been maintained over the years. So can you talk about sealant around windows or carpet replacement? Those seem like items that should be kind of worked into an operating budget. So if you have a leaky window, you don't wait 25 years to replace the sealant on all the windows, you fix the leaky window.
We've done that.
So why are we redoing sealant on all the windows? Like, give me a thought process. If you guys, as we've learned, have a stabilization account for repairs, how come some of this maintenance items like broken chairs are getting lumped into this versus ongoing maintenance?
Well, so let's talk about the sealants on the windows first. It's an elementary school, just Clough and Memorial are the two schools that we're having issues with. We redid it at Clough about maybe 12 or 15 years ago, but either the water is seeping in or the sun is hitting it right, but it's dried out and leaking again and it's getting into the window sills. So we have done that, but it hasn't lasted. It needs to be done again. The seats in the auditorium, we do the best we can, but we can't get parts. So if the chair breaks now, there's no way to get a part to fix the chair, so it's gone. So we try to manufacture parts, get different screws or whatever. But when you do the carpet in the auditorium, which has not been replaced in 30, 28 years, however long old the school is, you gotta take all the seats out. Similar to the HVAC on the roof, you're not gonna put the same seats in when you've already got 50 or 60 seats. Carpets in the room, we have done, periodically, we do 3 or 4 rooms a year when we have an issue where carpet's ripped.
Right.
We've had some grant money over the last probably 3 years that we've used at MISCO, and we've done about 15 rooms at MISCO. At Nipmuc, we've done it on an as-needed basis, but the biggest one there is the auditorium, where we're estimating $200,000 just for the carpeting. It's a big area. So we've spent, I would say, over the last 15 years, close to $3 million within our budget doing various upgrades, capital upgrades around the buildings. These are just bigger in scope.
And we, just because that has been a question that's come up, and when I do the longer presentation, I point out that I understand that because we're, pointing out things that are failing or things that might look like it's not maintenance.
Right.
At the beginning of the presentation, we outlined what we've done, like the larger projects out of operational over the last decade, which is close to the 3 million. It's just we haven't. There are some, when we're looking at the window sealants and caulking at each, building, that's about over 200,000 there. So sometimes we might be opting for, when we did the water treatment system and more critical, but we're seeing damage that are happening now.
It used to be like carpets in the rooms, like say a classroom was like $3,000 or $4,000 to do one classroom. It's now closer to $6,000, $7,000 per classroom to go and carpet it. So you maybe can only get 2 or 3 rooms, but you've got hundreds of rooms between the 4 schools.
Right. So just for my knowledge and for the folks who may be watching, what are the list of items, kind of capital or repair items that are planned for this year outside of this?
Well, so the way we approach that is at the end of the year, we see where we are budgetary wise. In other words, do we have leftover funds? And then we try to attack it over the summer. So we haven't really developed it yet for this summer, because I don't know where we're gonna end up with the budget. I don't think we're gonna have a lot left over this year.
I can give you a few examples, bigger items that we've done in the last couple of years that stand out.
Yeah.
Because I thought of putting it in the presentation, but instead we just put the list of items, but if you don't see it. For example, when we started the capital project list, in the overall assessment you had the MISCO stage. And that's something you'll be able to see when you're at MISCO now, what it's redone. We're talking completely unsafe. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it looks like you're gonna fall through it, completely unsafe. We did that over, you know, one of the summers. The gym, same thing. We were having this buckling in the gym that was unsafe and getting to a point where you couldn't play. And we had that. Those are some bigger, like, you know, items that stand out that people can see. But we've tried to target what, if it really impacts, if it's critical, right? We have the
Student safety.
But also programming that have impacted. But those are a couple of the items, and then we have smaller ones, and then we prioritize based off of the funding.
Yeah, I think it's useful to highlight the ongoing maintenance of the facilities that you have in place, because there's been some questions that that folks have said, well, are they not doing any maintenance? It seems like this is a hodgepodge of maintenance items that have been deferred and now is costing more. So, I think that's a concern that I've heard. That is something that probably should be probably talked about, or maybe you guys have.
And it's at the beginning, because that came up. So every time we have a meeting, it's really helpful in questions type. So thank you for that's really helpful, because we want to be able to answer the questions or be proactive with information. So as a result of that question, that might have come up at one of your meetings, I can't recall now, at the beginning of our longer presentation, we're gonna have to figure out for town meeting what's, you know, we can really have enough time for. I show the best practices for what, if you're maintaining, you know, school buildings, it's from MSBA best practices. And at this point, we are following all those practices. So we have a full, fully revised maintenance plan approved by MSBA. That's part of us being MSBA. They make you go through a lot of hoops. We had one, but it's approved. We have a preventative maintenance that we do every year, a whole list, and that we go through. We have the capital planning committee, which we didn't have in prior years. And we also do external assessments of the Habib. We did that assessment, and we did the security assessment. So all of those with our strategic plan and learning and surveys that we've done actually meet all of the best practices. Can we get better? Of course, but we've really been targeting it the last number of years. And we try to highlight it, but I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, I think it would be useful to highlight, because it has been a question that kind of popped up.
I get it.
Especially if people haven't been in the buildings too, because if you walk into Nipmuc, people who walk into Nipmuc, for as one example, say, oh, this is a brand new building. We say, no, it's actually 30 years old. We just really maintain it. But they don't necessarily say that with MISCO, right? That's the oldest building. And that's what we've been trying to pay and upgrade as many, but there are these other systems that we have to do, or we didn't quite get to the lockers replacement for $100,000.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, when you talk about like the security systems and all that, that seems, people can kind of, people get that, right? But the maintenance items, people kind of say, what's going on here? Like, you know,
I mean, hopefully, like, my truck's a piece of crap. I do a good job maintaining it, but after so many years, things just.
But it's all rusting out.
Things just deteriorate, right? There's only so much maintenance you can do.
We've tried, and
So,
yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments for the facilities
What do
project?
you guys need?
Seriously,
Safety of the students is number one.
Sometimes when you put this much money into, I don't think if it gets triggered here, but when you're using public funds and you invest so much money, you could trigger new ADA rules. Has anybody brought that up, that possibly at MESCO or somewhere, that you could be subject to a higher level of ADA scrutiny?
I don't believe anything we're doing changes we're pretty ADA compliant already.
The only, I think the only one, and we already know this, would be at the fields, the construction in those front fields, and the purpose of a lot of that work is to make it ADA compliant, because it's not right now.
I don't know the properties that are ADA compliant until we do work. And then the ADA compliancy goes up to 2010 rules, which are vastly
Totally different,
Right,
yeah.
so they were, I mean, most of these major projects, the big money ticket things are like the building management systems and data cabling
Yeah.
and intercom
Yeah.
and paging systems that really don't have anything to do with ADA access.
No,
The bathrooms at NISCO, that would be something that we have to make sure when we do,
Yeah.
put in new partitions and things.
But in typical,
Which is part of what we want to do for
But
that.
that's
because
not
it's-
what
Yeah, but I know.
in
you
typical
need to
government
trigger
fashion
that.
though, is it not, does it not matter,
it doesn't matter.
right?
That's what
It's simply
How much
about
money
the
you
amount of
spend.
money you spend. It has nothing to do with whether it's targeted to something that would apply to it in any way, shape or form.
Windows
Because
is
God forbid
factory
that makes sense.
property,
Yeah.
property of housing property that was a factory.
Yeah.
Windows were garage door size, they were $1 million. So we triggered the new AD, I had to move fire extinguishers down an inch in concrete walls, you know,
Yeah,
like,
because it triggered. it.
because I triggered the new rules. So that's why I just,
Yeah, no.
I'm forever scarred by that process.
So Jesse, that's a really good question. Usually when we have contracts and are procuring designers and OPMs, there's a provision in there about their standard of care and their ability to design based upon code requirements and all that. So it's incumbent upon designers at that level to take that into consideration, because you're right, even if you're not touching anything that has ADA relevance, if you invest a certain amount of percentage dollar of the building, you trigger all of that. But we're typically covered on the procurement side.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments on the facilities related item?
What's the population of the school?
Clough is about 375, NISCO's about 680, Nipmuc's about 550, 530, somewhere in there. Memorial's at 400, and no, Memorial's at like 510. They're getting close to capacity. We're at about 2,100 now, so.
We've been 2,100 the last couple of years.
That's a lot of feet,
Yeah,
5 days a week, walking on carpets.
well, kids are really
Oh.
gentle though.
Opening and closing doors.
Yeah, I mean, we have,
Lifting and dropping toilet seats, pulling a handle on the flusher, that's a lot.
Toilet seats for middle schoolers are actually designed for elementary schoolers.
Right.
We did do on the pay the urinals too.
He always likes to bring that up. I actually always leave that out. I talk about.
now, we did redo one bathroom at NISCO with BVT as a project. I mean, it was really worked out great, but it took them an entire school year where we had a bathroom closed in an entire wing while they did the work, because there's only every other week. This is something where we really need to fix,
Yeah.
especially, some of these bathrooms are.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
No, everything that here is very understandable, at least from how I look at it. I'm actually in the industry, so I understand. Again, we got a 30-year-old roof, asphalt shingle roof.
Yeah, it's time.
It's time.
Right.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna call for roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendelee,
Senior dry.
Head I.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Krieger, aye. Great.
You didn't talk about the generator.
I did.
Oh.
Just mention the generator.
Quickly, they said.
All right, can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to approve Article 23, the MURSD Fields and Grounds Debt Authorization?
so moved.
Second.
All right, discussion.
Maureen, before you get into it, I just want to make kind of a point of order on this, that the motions on these will include language that say subject to debt exclusion. So the authorization will be contingent upon the ballot measure, thereafter. And all of this language that's in here in this explainer, this warrant report, is largely taken from the school's website. And I then, ran it all by Maureen and Jay. So this isn't me just talking about the project. This is kind of the school's own language on it. Most of the other things are me just talking about the project, but I just wanted to make the distinction on these three.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. For the fields and grounds, where it's about MISCOs, this, I'll give a high level overview of the fields, and then Nipmuc backfields and Nipmuc front fields. So there are 3 sections. It impacts, 6 to 8 fields across all of it. At MISCO, it's not, if you're familiar with the fields or anyone watching, it's not the fields right in the back, that's the football field with the gravel track. That has irrigation, it's well maintained, that's in good shape. It's the other fields that get immense usage, baseball field, softball field, and then off of that is where we have flag football, soccer, field hockey, gym classes. I'm sure I'm missing something of usage back there. And over the years, it does not have irrigation system, which is part of the problem, and it's become completely compacted. And all the images that we showed all the divots and how unsafe it is. And, lots of comments from other towns, they won't play there, it's really dangerous for field hockey, et cetera. So I know you've heard the story, I'll keep going on, but that's NISCO. For the fields and grounds at Nipmuc, just a couple highlights I do think it's important to just keep repeating is we have similar uneven terrain and divots and holes and safety issues. And safety is a big part. Safety and accessibility are a big part of our field upgrades. There is a lack of accessibility, particularly to the backfields. Some of the images have that it's all flooded out. That would all be paved. You'd be able to get emergency vehicles easily to the backfields, which is hard right now. And also you would have a community walking path that would be around all of the fields. We had some drone footage done. It's now on the website if you haven't seen it. There are some that are really nice and can show you all of the fields, and it'll be close to like a mile walking path around all of those fields. And it also for accessibility and the mobility issues to be able to get back there. Also to help with accessibility and mobility for our community members to any of these fields, we would have some parking would be part of the project that would be a little bit closer. A couple other highlights. We do not have any lights at our fields. That's really unusual to not have any lighting at any of your fields at a high school. What that means is a lot of this is about increasing utilization of our fields, and we're unable to use it when the sun goes down, and we'd be able to bring in the town, have the community together on multiple events, and raise revenue by hosting events. Well, thank you for showing those. Yeah, I think that's a softball. So if you hold it there, that's great. In the front, it's rotating through, okay. It's just on our main page, but in the front area, we'd be rotating it. On the right by Pleasant Street, you would have the seating would be on the right. You'd be able to have accessibility to come in right at the top. And I describe this that where I live in Grafton and they built the seating into the side. When I brought my mom in the wheelchair, to watch a football game, I just brought her right up. Anyone who has any accessibility issues, we can watch right there. You don't have that view or ability. If you're brought down, you can't see anything because you don't have anything above, all right? That's really important, and I always bring it up because it's really important to me that community members can access all of these. Other things, you can see the state of some of the irrigation there, but even this week, multiple lacrosse teams, practices, games are going to other towns that have turf fields because we aren't able to use our fields because of the rain, but you can use it if you have that turf in that front field. It increases utilization and you wouldn't have the damage that you see down the middle that we've talked about. A lot of people don't know that we have an amazing track team, but we don't have a track. And I learned from students, and I learned this just in the last week, that I'm talking to students, they practice, I can't even believe this, hurdles in the cafeteria. It's a really low ceiling, like in the cafeteria, it's not even the distance. I mean, they have to go and have every meet everywhere else. And if we also had a track, we could host events, again, MIA events, and we could have our, kids could have a track that they can use.
So there's enough space here for a track, a football field, without taking trees down?
They're turning it.
They would be turning it at an angle. I don't know if in the presentation it shows the plans for it, but we'd be turning it and they were able to look and see.
So like be kind of diagonal?
Yeah, at a diagonal, yeah, in order to fit a regulation track in there. In the softball and baseball, so that's some of the front field, and softball, baseball in the back. The baseball backstop is really far away from, yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's really far away.
I didn't notice that was turned when I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I like these drone footage too, so you can kind of see it and it makes sense when you're looking at it. We're gonna turn the softball field because right now it's not regulation on one side where it hits the trees, which you can kind of see on the edge there. It's not maybe the best picture of that one. But, and then the baseball would be moved back and they're used for multiple practice fields as well, and it's compacted, and we'd be improving the irrigation system that goes with it. We have invested in maintenance and upgrades. We're taking some of the shallow wells and having deeper wells.
Yeah, I talked about
Yeah.
the wells when they built the school were 12 feet deep. They were like bedrock wells. So if it doesn't rain, the wells don't do anything. We have put in 2 wells so far that are, I want to say 700 to 800 feet down, that are getting us like 50 gallons a minute, which is what you really need to irrigate fields.
So right now, the track team.
Yeah.
Gets bused to NISCO to practice.
Mhm. Or they run inside.
Or they run inside,
Like
in the
in traffic
streets.
areas, or in the streets, yeah.
But even the track in Cisco
Yeah.
is not regular size.
And that
that's
was,
not-
that's the point of what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, it's a gravel.
That rocky gravel path.
Yeah.
That is called the track.
Yeah.
Is that part, we're doing that as well?
No.
Or
No, we're not.
what would
redoing
happen with that? Would it
That-
be used anymore?
The middle school.
They use it at the.
They
middle
use it
school.
for like gym classes?
They also have track too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know,
Okay,
country,
but
but-
that, I mean, it's borderline dangerous to run on that thing. So, I mean, would that be fixed at least as part of this?
Well, we're working on that now within our budget.
Oh, like.
We generally
Regrade it.
groom it and grade it every year. The
I
problem is
noticed.
the weeds grow up all the
I
time.
noticed it was.
So it's like an
Looks okay.
ongoing
Looks okay
investment.
right now.
Right, well, we have somebody that's licensed to put down weed applications and
Yeah.
is going and trying
Yeah.
to do that. I
Right.
mean, in a perfect world, we need to excavate it out like, 2 feet and put
Yeah.
new fill in, but again, that's a big budget thing, so.
Yeah, now she's asking.
And, I mean, to your question though, when NUCP, the group that's done all the research over all the years, it was a larger plan of upgrades that they brought forward, and through the capital plan process, we did reduce it.
This is definitely.
And like, for example, in the regional plan was to have another turf field in that backfield for field hockey, and then that would really increase utilization. And that just, it's just, we were trying to reduce, and that's where we're at. Same thing. We're trying to manage it within the budget as best as we can.
Well, it would at least save some busing.
Yeah.
Is that,
I mean, we pay, do we have to pay extra?
No, usually, quite honestly, I think the kids that are on the high school track team come to Nisco Drive.
Yeah.
They drive there and then go home and.
rent ours?
Yeah.
This bus.
Other buses?
Yeah.
Because I mean, we have a hard time getting buses for athletics right now for just about everything, because they just don't have the drivers. We can usually get 1 bus a day if necessary.
But there is one bus that goes.
They may use the
Buckle
vans,
into
we have a
Nisco
couple of
anyways,
vans.
yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
They use those to bring the kids down.
Which has helped reduce some of the costs, yeah. So those are some of the highlights, like, a couple of things that I brought up that's more recent that some people don't know, just facts are, like, when Nipmuc was built, we didn't have a football team, so we show the image of how, we don't have the press box, they're standing on top of, these bins and all of that, and just to point that out with our facility, and I don't know, I think I hit all of the main points for the fields and grounds, but happy to answer any questions.
I have a question on safety of turf versus grass. And have you guys done some research around that for kind of player safety? Because you hear a number of different things where kind of pros want to play on grass versus turf because of like ACLs and stuff like that. So can you talk a little bit about the idea of safety, why turf would be safer for students, student athletes versus grass?
No, that's a good question. It actually came up in our last meeting, and one thing that, I'm gonna tell a story, then we can get to like the research, but sometimes for some of us who aren't familiar with what the current turf fields are like, might think of what they used to be like. So when I'm not gonna say how many years ago, but played field hockey on grass, and then we started to go in some schools many years ago were getting turf. it is not that turf anymore. It's actually really kind of soft and comfy. You know, my son plays football on it where we are, and it's actually safer. It's not the old hard turf. What came up at the Upton meeting that I think Brett Simons was talking about is, I know they've talked about turf for, you know, an NFL and is it safe and all of that, and that this isn't the NFL, and actually we're getting more injuries right now, and some research is saying it is safe. So we have some research literature in there that it is safer. And we have kids who are getting hurt right now pulling ACLs because they tripped over the divot. That was a lacrosse story that I just heard last week, that I didn't know.
I don't question like the state of the
Yeah.
fields and the potential for injuries, because
Yeah.
my kids both played on those fields, so
Right.
I completely get out.
Yeah, and it's actually softer, you know,
Well, the other
there,
thing
when you're
too-
out there in it, you know.
You know, they talked about it in others
Yeah.
about, you know, players in the NFL or stadiums are going back to grass, but they have to remember that an NFL stadium can replace the grass every week. They have the money to do that.
No, I completely get it.
And while I appreciate that everybody thinks that their little Johnny is going on to play
Correct.
professional sports, they are not moving with the momentum and the
Right.
sheer force
That you-
that which professional athletes are
Yeah.
moving.
But it is a question that we've received, and when you put in, you know, we tried to feed some of the research in, and when we have like a place where you can ask questions, and I think it gives you the answer on that, but I try to put it on the page. But it has come up a couple times. So
Yeah, Google searches are not friendly to the question
Yeah,
because they're all focused on college, which is pre-professional and professional athletes.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was some high school studies that
Yeah.
around kind of student safety, that's.
Yeah.
One thing to point out is there's a big learning curve with maintenance. When it comes to moving to turf, that maintenance, I'm sure there is some sort of class or certification on knowing, because I know in Northbridge, when they put theirs in, made some really big mistakes on day one, when they started trying to plow their fields, when
yikes.
it was brand new, and I
Really?
know
Oh my
there was some
goodness.
issues, so
Yeah.
I'm from Northbridge.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
no.
Well, I live in Grafton, so we
Yeah.
like put in the turf field and like had to learn how to do it
You
and
gotta
manage
learn.
it. And you have to, it's all about the rules too, because of, you know, the cleats and all the seats
Right.
and having that, all that.
Yeah.
But Bill Casey,
only.
Bill Casey, who has been, you know, helping us for MUCP and, you know, presented as well.
Yes,
He works and helps do some of our maintenance, but train our people as well. So he'd
When
be
you
the
talk
person
about
doing it, yeah.
Useful life of the
Yeah,
field,
exactly, yeah,
you can significantly reduce it
Yeah.
very quickly.
Yeah.
You maintain it.
We actually had a similar issue with the rubber playground surfaces at the
Yeah.
elementary schools, where for years the custodians were going out there and shoveling it because the kids wanted to play.
Yeah.
And it just ripped the whole thing
Yeah.
apart. So now that we replaced them at all the schools.
Yeah.
When it snows, you either play in snow or you don't go out there.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I don't know if I ever answered you on this, Mike, you had asked about the difference tax impact for if it was just grass as opposed to turf. It's about $7 a year of the tax impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had sent me
Yeah.
one.
I was gonna send you something else, and I don't think I ever did.
Yeah,
And I will at some point.
Yeah.
Probably like a month or something.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
And some also like the differences with turfs from long ago, they used to only last 10 years and now they're 12 to 15 years as well.
Yeah.
Which is a difference if people are familiar with the old turf fields.
The uptime piece of it is just, in this, I live right by Grover Field, right? Grover Field is closed right now so that we can grow grass in the spring just to trample it, right? And this past weekend, the entire soccer organization, the entire lacrosse organization, everybody was shut down. My third grader was able to go up to Hopkinton to play because they have a nice turf field and just happen to have availability, right? And while one field is not going to solve all of the youth problems in town, it's at least an option for some folks to benefit from, right?
Yeah, I mean, our fields are overused. You know, I mean, ideally with a grass field, you need to rest it every few years, take it offline, and we don't have that.
We don't have that ability to do that. So this is one way, and then hopefully throughout the towns, we're able to continue to address the youth as well, which is part of it to do it all together, you know.
Since Dan is here,
Don't
yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on, you know, kind of the upgrades that the folks are suggesting and what the impact might be on the usage of our fields and any kind of view that you may have on this.
Yeah, so I think, and Parks very briefly discussed this, and I think, I don't know if John's still on the call, I think at some point the commission may discuss and take a formal position on this. You know, it sounds, from what I understand of this now, it sounds like there's a lot of work being done at the kind of minor fields at NISCO. I don't know as much about what gets used at Nipmuc. I know the fields at NISCO are used. I think they're splitting between Nipmuc youth football and flag football or something, and they're fighting over the same space. I know softball, baseball are using those fields. I think, you know, it can only help us to improve things. To be honest, and Parks has not done a deep dive into this yet.
Yeah, as someone who's part of many youth organizations and has coached in youth organizations, this is one small step towards improvement that I know a lot of people are very excited about to try to have for their kids as they grow through the district.
So just a question of like kind of usage outside of the schools. So if the towns want to use the new fields, like how do you guys manage that to balance the needs of Upton versus Mendon?
We have a facilities, coordinator, and first we start with our own sports teams and we set up the whole schedule, what it is, and then you kind of sit down with the head of youth football and the head of flag football, and then, the field hockey and youth soccer, and they work around and use our fields. Mostly on the weekends is when you have, most of those, or in the evenings. I know they're all coming in the evening. You could probably speak to them.
I know some of them are doing, I know some.
We're done, they're all coming in after, they're using the fields at different times, but it's all kind of squished and managed, and then if you can't use the field, it's mostly at NISCO.
Oh, yeah, mostly at NISCO.
Right, yeah.
So, all of the youth organizations are Mendon Upton.
Right.
There's no Mendon youth baseball and Upton youth baseball, it's combined.
All of them, yeah.
And what I've experienced with football, so I coach flex football, I would show up and there's a softball game going on. There was confusion on whether field hockey had the same area or not. And then we'd be trampling all over it. So we would practice flex football on their freshly cut and freshly lined field hockey area, of which hopefully they played the game because the other team didn't show up and say, we're not playing on that unsafe territory. And then flag football's on the other end. We had no night options.
Hey, when my kids played, we used to bring the generators out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so,
and crank up the trees, right?
So what we did in youth football is
Football, they bring in the lights and do that, right?
Yeah, so
I was hoping that they would cancel practice so I could get home, but no.
We don't do that.
They do that now and your kids are done.
Yeah, tell them.
The director of youth football is able to bring in generator lights so that we can practice well into the evening.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I don't need to belabor this.
And if you had the lights at Nipmuc, with the turf field in the front, you actually be able to use it in the evening and you would be adding time, because once it's dark, I don't think anyone uses it.
I don't know how this happened with my 8th grader, but so the benefit of the select youth lacrosse team is that it's all Friday night lights. Somehow we're playing every game at home just about, and they're all at MISCO. So we are not taking the benefit, we have no benefit of playing at home, and now the whole benefit of doing that program is for Friday night lights, and we're not even getting it in his last year in youth lacrosse. It's so disappointing, right? And I will say that there are also kids who I'm assuming aren't going to the district because it's an embarrassment, right? I mean, sports is a very big reason why people decide to stay in district or not. I'm a big hockey family, and because of our lack of support of hockey and the fact that we don't look at how we're managing our co-op with Northbridge, hockey players do not want to stay in the district. And I can only imagine that this gets worse as we think about football and lacrosse. This will only continue to get worse, and we need to keep kids in our district.
Obviously with the economy and the concern of coming for 3 overrides here, how are
Debt exclusions.
Debt exclusions. How are you planning to message
kind of the priority of these items?
Well,
Yeah,
let's put it this way, the roof
The roof
The
is.
roof is number one priority. There's support from the state on that, and
We can't
like
lose
Mike
that
said as
state
well,
funding.
everybody gets a leaking roof.
Got it.
I think we'd love to have all three, so I don't think we're gonna say one's more important than the other, because they all impact students.
And that was why originally we were looking to bring it all together, because this was the list, right? We left things out that would make the district better facility-wise, but it's not in there, but we went with the priorities. I think when I talk to people, it's about like validating that there is this level of uncertainty that if people are feeling, and we are too, everyone is.
Right.
Like, we know that, we recognize it. Our goal, and I wanna keep saying it, is to reduce the tax burden as much as we can. So for the fields, MUCT will be fundraising, and that will help reduce. They can't do the fundraising until it gets approved. We're hoping with CPC that might be able to help a little bit. We're applying for other grants, just like BB2 was talking about grant funding, we're always looking for opportunities. So there's ways that I know the numbers here, and we're gonna keep looking to reduce it, and we're really committed to that, for that.
Yeah, I think it should, it's a messaging point that you.
Yeah.
And we built into some of this escalators for some of the national things going on, tariffs and things like that, maybe we'll get lucky on the day we wanna buy stuff, the tariffs won't be in place until the day after we place our order. But we tried to anticipate as many different things like this, so our goal is, yes, if you put all of these together, you're approaching $30 million, but the goal is to have it be much less than that.
All right, any other questions, comments?
Just one, sorry.
Sure.
I thought, and I think you guys said I was wrong, but I thought the condition of Mendon fields in general would have a larger negative impact on the town's budget-wise because of school choice, because so many families would know the condition of the fields here versus other fields, that they'd start choosing to school choice and it would cost us money to send the kids out, but
I can.
that's
Choice
kind of
are fairly,
So we have a lot of, there are other districts, people mostly come to the district because of like the
Just
education
because of the
outcomes.
education,
And we have a long list, and we can't have too many coming in, but we do. I will say, to Mike's point, when you're in that 8th grade, and if you are that, I don't wanna pick a sport, but like thinking related to the fields, and that's your thing. Like, there are families that make choices to take their child out of our system for sports that have everything, have all of that. And that does happen, and they take them to private schools. They don't go to other public schools, but they take them to private schools.
That's what you said,
And-
that's why I thought, I didn't realize that.
And we have, I don't talk about it a lot, but just people we're the state champions, in soccer, girls, like we win lots of dual valley, like we do really well considering our lack of some of the resources that we've had. But imagine if you had Friday night lights, imagine if you had all of your youth coming up, going to all of those events and saying, and wearing the gear and saying, this is where I wanna go, this is where I wanna stay. That there is something to be said for that, and I can really speak to it in the town that I live in, because we did not have some strong programs. We built the facilities, it really was, you build it and they will come and they stay, and they don't go anywhere, and everyone's there every night, and that it does build community, and keeps people. But I wouldn't say, like, on a cost perspective, largely, we still have a lot of people wanna come here.
Yeah, but it's focused on the education.
Yeah.
That's it. I ran the middle school team, the Nipmuc middle school team, right? I've had 3 to 4 teams of 20 players apiece, all optional to be able to at least be a part of the Northridge Co-op. Like, I'm not saying that we should have our own hockey team, but we put 0 effort into supporting that program, and nobody feels like it's anything that it's worth going to if hockey is important to you. And for hockey people, like that is a big deal. Yes. And that goes beyond education.
Right.
I'm focusing on education for my son, and he's most focused on education. So we're excited to be a part of Nipmuc next year, but not excited to be a part of the hockey situation. And the amount of parents that I interact with that go to mostly private schools or BVT is simply because it's all related to sports. Lots of people make those decisions based off of sports, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Roll call vote. All in favor?
Mendeleer, aye.
Carl,
Cantor, aye.
And then I,
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're done, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, near it.
Here, support. Here, Upton.
From the FinComs and the select boards, I think for the most part, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we just presented to Upton Select, so it was, you know, they didn't have an active vote rate, but it was really,
Easy to get the rest of
rest
us to come out and actually
Yeah.
support it as well. That's the hurdle.
but everyone seems to be understand, like the more you tell the story and you explain it and answer the questions and people,
Is there gonna
it's
be
making
a
sense now.
big push? Like, there's the Facebook bulletin board and the Facebook moms and dads groups. I haven't seen anything on those.
So there's lots of postings on there.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen it.
But they've definitely been up there.
They've been up there? Maybe I did blink. Oh, so there's stuff on
So,
there.
and MUCP is doing social media and sending
Strong mind,
information
strong
out.
body.
All I can do as a
Try to
school
make
is
sure that
give just
our students
info,
are-
I can't
Our
advocate.
children
And
play
so
the basket.
on,
So their minds,
from my
we should be doing the
webpage
same
and
thing
Facebook,
for
we'll
the
still
physical.
send out like a couple, like, I have an information session this
People just
Thursday.
repost it.
I hope people will come to that, because I think when they hear it and see it, they understand.
Right.
And I know some people were commenting that they didn't think that we were doing enough, like, public information, so we're posting a couple, and hopefully people will be able to see those, which I think would be helpful as well. But from the social media standpoint, they are posting in there.
Yeah, they definitely are.
So you can reshare.
The only one I saw.
Right. Yeah,
Right, that's the only one I saw.
There it is, a lot of people are commenting, so it's not.
Yeah, it doesn't
They're
stay,
just saying it.
I saw it
doesn't
because
say
you-
much in there.
right, so when there's a lot of comments, things pop to the top. All right, we got a lot of other things we gotta finish up, so.
Thank you for your time tonight, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremy, do you want to just start from the top and we can hit the things we haven't hit yet?
Do you want to do the CPA article about the MURSD field payments first and then start from the top, since we just talked about the fields?
All right, can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 24 CPA MURSD fields debt payment?
So moved.
All right, discussion.
All right, so this is we're having a meeting on the 28th between the Mendon CPC and the Upton CPC, a joint meeting, to make sure we're all on the same page about what parts of the field project are CPA eligible. So I don't have a number right now for what we would vote for a CPA number, but this is to have CPA funds pay for part of the yearly debt service. It would be a yearly article, same way we have the police CPA money for the police station to pay debt service each year. There won't be much, if any, debt service in fiscal 26. So when we come to an actual number for the article, this will be limited. I just wanted to talk about that. We're seeking the full authorization for the fields, but we anticipate that there will be a CPA CPA subsidy for the debt service. But until we meet on the 28th, we don't have it.
Is there verbiage that we can add to this for us to vote on that captures the intent of what you just put forth, right? Because while I have an opinion about supporting the idea of this, not having an actual number in the operations of like, well, what did you actually recommend? We should be recommending a specific number. So there's well, we can wait until that meeting happens, and we can also vote to support or not this 30 minutes before the town meeting. That's happened before. Or do you think there's verbiage you could add that maybe addresses what I'm trying to say here in regards to, I don't want to throw a not to exceed number, but it gives a better detail on what we're voting on.
So yeah, I was going to suggest not to exceed. So if you say not to exceed $50,000, it's going to be nowhere close to that in what we actually pay in fiscal 26. And then if there's anything in fiscal 26, and then at town meeting we'll have a likely a better sense, but we're not going to have debt service schedules yet, so we even won't have a number until we issue all the debt. Okay. And we can come back with a sharper pencil for fiscal 27.
All right, so maybe in the commentary we edited to say, expectations is not to exceed $50,000 for FY26.
Yes, great. I'll polish this a little bit, but.
I mean, the expectation is that we're going to be able to use CPA money to the fullest extent that we can. Is that accurate?
That's up to CPC to ultimately recommend in their votes. If it's a $10 million ask and $8 million of it is CPC eligible, they're probably not going to want to take on $4 million each, so to speak, in debt service through CPA funds. So it may not be to the fullest extent possible. It may be to the fullest extent kind of budgetarily feasible.
What do we have in our account right now?
I don't know that. I will follow up with the committee.
If I remember from the meeting we had, I think maybe more accurate, we were looking at our annual revenue. And I'd want to say that was between 500,000 and 600,000, because a lot of it's the state match that goes up and down. I think that was the discussion the CPA commission had. I don't know, Ann was on the call. I don't know if she's still.
Yeah, she left.
She dropped off.
I think that was kind of the discussion, is what percentage of our annual, or what amount of our annual revenue would we feel comfortable putting towards this project?
And we don't know what percentage is eligible.
That's what the discussion between the two committees is going to have. We wanted to have it together, so Upton didn't say, these 6 things are eligible, and Mendon said actually the 7th thing is also eligible. We wanted the same understanding.
What we're voting on is whether we would recommend to the town to support some number of CPA funds to go towards the field's debt payment. For this next, because we'd have to vote on this every year, the expectation for fiscal 26 is to not exceed 50,000. This could be, just an example by extremes, it could be, 4 million next year, right? But that's a discussion for next year.
But how can we put 50 grand on this with not knowing what's eligible?
It's expectation of not to exceed. So
no, I understand it, but we don't know what's in the budget, and we don't know what the.
So, in terms of eligibility, I think the big thing is the turf. We cannot buy the turf.
Right.
But then it's what, is some percentage of the work to put the turf in. I think that's where the discussion is. But I think the amount they would contribute is far less than what it will ultimately.
Understood. I question the idea of having this arbitrary 50 grand in here that came out of the air. It's not based on a percentage of what we have in CPA funding. It's not based on a percentage of what the project cost is.
Well, so this is the point, is I'm trying to either have us be comfortable with verbiage that we're comfortable in voting on now,
right?
Or do we wait until the meeting on the 28th happens where an exact number is determined, and then we vote on that at some time between then and town meeting, which could be 30 minutes before town meeting.
I want to be clear too, even after the 28th meeting. So if we say, $6 million is eligible, we don't know what the borrowing is going to be in fiscal 26, and we don't know what the payment is going to be, if any, in fiscal 26. My anticipation is we're going to have minimal, if any, payments in 26. So CPA or the CPCs will determine the eligibility, but I think Dan was getting at, the amount that they're going to recommend using is going to be much lower than what is ultimately overall eligible for CPA funds. I want to say too that if the debt exclusion for the field, if the authorization passes town meeting and then the debt exclusion passes on the ballot, and we don't use CPA funds, those funds are still going to be raised by CPA, and then we will have to raise more money through the debt exclusion. Whereas if we use CPA money that's being raised anyway, we will not have to additionally raise that on the debt exclusion. The trade-off is then some other thing that CPA was going to do, we can't do. But if this doesn't pass and the other two pieces do pass, taxes will be resultingly higher.
Right. I think without Ann here to kind of talk through what the laundry list of items are, it's hard to make a decision on this. Just my take.
Yeah, that's fine.
I agree. Jack, I would recommend that we hold on this without a some certain in here.
I just want to be clear that even after the 28th, we're not going to have we'll have their level of comfort, but we're not going to have a real fiscal 26 number, perhaps until mid fiscal year.
Well, as it's drafted right now, though, it's drafted with a transfer of a sum of money. So it's as drafted, it's describing a sum of money. So
That's just the warrant article. The actual motion will have a dollar amount.
Okay, so we're gonna know that just before town meeting.
Again, it will be a level to which CPA is comfortable going up to, but the actual
Understood, but Jeremy, we don't have that right now.
Correct.
So voting on that this evening strikes me as being perhaps premature.
Right, and this is the question I was asking at the beginning, right? Is there a number of a not to exceed expectation to allow us to vote on that? And then if we put in expected not to exceed 50,000 and that's what we vote to recommend, if the motion on the floor is higher than 50,000, I guess I'm trying to save us time by being able to have verbiage in here that we're comfortable with, that represents what we could see from the motion on the floor. The other option is we just wait until that not to exceed number is understood from the committee and vote on it right before town meeting.
I think that's the safest bet, so that everybody feels comfortable.
Okay.
I mean, we've done that many times before.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why we have the FinCom meeting half hour before.
Yeah,
to clean up the last 11th hour.
Yeah, and I think it would just be useful to hear from Ann, like what are some of the commitments that they have in place, and like what's the trade-offs, and what do they feel that they can fund kind of on an ongoing basis for this? Because this isn't a once and done, right?
This is for fiscal year 26.
Right.
Yeah. So fiscal year 27, we will be having the same conversation, and then it will be what's the number and the trade-off and all that other stuff. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But like understanding kind of what areas that they may want to fund kind of this year and next year. So, we bought the land over in the corner of Providence and Hartford, right? And there was some discussion of doing some development work on that with funding. I don't know where that stands, right?
Yep.
Right, so just trying to understand from her standpoint, what are some of the commitments that they have or some of the plans that they have to better kind of determine, what level of funding. And I think it would be useful. I'm thinking, the more that we can reduce the tax burden with funds that we have in CPA, the better likelihood of passage of
100%.
Right. So I would hate to constrict our amount when the possibility maybe it is higher, or the plan could be that it could be higher. So that's just my 2 cents.
No, I agree. So In light of that, I'm just thinking, should is select board attending that meeting?
I believe just the liaison, I believe just Mike Goddard is attending. It's not going to be a posted select board meeting.
I guess in that perspective, maybe we should have at least a FinCom representation there to push this committee's viewpoints on trying to save the town money.
Yeah, or at least have Ann maybe after the fact come and send us an email or talk to us about it.
Okay.
You know, just so that we get some more information. That's all.
Just not a lot of time between 4:28 and 5:2.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. Minimally, then, I'm gonna recommend that we post for 30 minutes before town meeting to vote on this with the final number, and we can talk later about attendance at this 4:28 meeting.
And where would you just declare that we meet? Will it be at the school?
Yeah, in our seats.
Yeah, so that will be 30 minutes before, but so everybody show up to the meeting early, to the town meeting, and we'll have it at the school.
Okay,
Yeah.
is there like a room?
No, we'll just, at the little table.
Like, what do we put on the paper that, stamps?
In the auditorium, the Misco auditorium.
Okay. I don't want to mess it up again.
Don't worry. Okay, can I get a motion to recommend, to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 1?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
This just says we got to stay in balance. You can't approve something without a funding source. It's kind of the key to the whole thing.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor?
Mandalay,
Carl, I.
Stand
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. All right, can I get a motion to recommend, vote to recommend to the town to support Article 2, salaries for elected officials?
so moved.
Second.
Discussion?
No changes in any of the stipends. The only change is the town clerk salary from fiscal 25 to 26. It's a 3% COLA consistent with other non-union and union collective bargaining agreements are currently in place.
So just, so are these salaries fixed for the entire year, or at the special town meeting, will there be an ask for an additional increase in salaries?
So in this article specifically, the anticipation is the whole year. We're not going to come back. The only reason we came back last year was because the annual town meeting vote was incorrect and the town clerk actually got a salary cut.
Right, but there was also some increase of 2% across some other positions, if I remember correctly.
That was because there wasn't settled collective bargaining agreements. We have settled collective bargaining agreements for all of fiscal 26, so that won't happen this year.
Okay, thank you.
That fiscal year was on. All right, any other questions or comments?
No, just make sure that that statement goes in the minutes. The one he just made.
No, they're not gonna ask for raises again.
So when we look back, we can verify, hey, you said this.
Yeah, so happy to say we have collective bargaining agreements in place for the whole of fiscal 26. We have individual contracts in place for the whole of fiscal 26. And I will not be recommending, and I can't see a world in which the select board would, to come and reopen those contracts for fiscal 26.
Or for non-union members.
That's what I meant by individual contracts.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Mandalay, aye.
Carl, I.
Sandra, aye.
Had I?
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 3, paying bills of the prior year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
There's a transposition error in the fall, and we owe $557.90 of an invoice which was supposed to be included in the fall town meeting.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor?
Mendeley, aye.
Sandra, aye.
Had that I.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye.
I do not believe Article 5 has a finance committee recommendation. It's something we passed in the fall, and then we need to do each individual fiscal year to accept easements that have no financial cost or abandon easements that have no financial cost. Same thing with the 5-year land use program. Had hearings on it, public hearings on it, multi-board meetings on it. And again, it's something we do yearly. This is another one that we do yearly. A lot of these will be on the consent agenda. Oh, sorry, motion, apologize.
Get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 7, the CPA police station debt payment.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
So this number is known as CPA, what the draw will be each year because the debt is outstanding, and this is the current year amount. CPC has voted on this and has been part of town meeting for the last number of years that the debt's been outstanding.
Barry, do you know when that's gonna be paid off?
I can find out as we're talking about something else.
Okay, just more just out of curiosity, that's all.
Probably 16-ish years.
Not in the immediate future.
All right, no need.
Probably your last year is.
Yeah, probably.
Any other questions or comments? All right. All those in favor?
Mendeley, aye.
Sandra, aye.
Had that I.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. Can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 8, the CPA budget allocation?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, so in the commentary, we're required to set aside 10% for those 3 areas, preservation, open space, and historic. And then we have affordable housing, and 65% for a budgeted reserve to give CPC additional flexibility. This is the same budget allocation that we've had in at least recent memory that I've been able to go and look at.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
A budget reserve could be spread to any one of those other ones, right?
Yeah,
so,
the 10%.
So you get a big affordable housing project, that can all go to that if it has to.
Right, 10% is the floor. The state makes sure that you spend at least that much, and then the budgeted reserve, that's for intra-year flexibility based upon what projects are available.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Do a roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendeley, aye.
Carl, aye.
Sandra, aye.
Had that I.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. All right, can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 9, the CPA Affordable Housing Coordinator?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Sorry. Discussion.
So this was the town has done this previously, paid a stipend to a part-time or stipended employee, and now this is being rolled into the full-time planner, as we talked about at the joint meeting with Select Board, and then CPC voted to fund 15,000 of that, which meant we had the vote earlier today, and then this is just the article to do that.
And is the plan that they would be funding this every year?
Yes. They have to vote on it each year, and we have to do this each year. So this doesn't lock them in or, lock us out or whatever. But that's the anticipation.
Any other questions or comments? All right, do a roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendeley, aye.
Carl, aye.
Sandra, aye.
Had that I.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. Can get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 10 insurance repayments.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
So this is a peculiar one. I talked about this a little bit at the multi-board meeting, but we've had an individual who is retired, early retirement. Deductions for their health insurance plan come out of the Worcester retirement system at a point a number of years ago, back to fiscal 20. I think I have it in here, February 22. So in fiscal 22, switched from a family to an individual plan. That information never made it from the town to Worcester Retirement. So the town has been paying its portion of a individual plan, and this individual has been having deductions related to a family plan taken out of his check from Worcester Retirement for 3 years. We've done all the detail work to figure out what those entail. And really, the way we receive those deductions from Worcester Retirement, and we deposited into our general fund. And so our free cash is overstated by $18,823 as a result in these erroneous over deductions by Worcester Retirement System. And it was over deducted by Worcester Retirement because we never got them the information 3+ years ago. Our current HR coordinator found this error when going through recertification this year, immediately stopped it to be an individual deduction, but the town owes this individual $18,800. The kind of preemptive question, I guess, what's the tax implication for this person? That's kind of on them to figure out. We don't give tax advice or anything like that, but we will remit to this person, should this pass, their over deductions back to them.
That's a great summary of the hour that we spent on this in the last meeting.
So what's the check and balance if this doesn't happen again? What did we learn, and what are we going to be doing so that we are making sure that we're not in this position 3 years from now for somebody else who goes from a family plan to an individual plan or vice versa?
Yeah, good question. It's active certification. So I asked HR this as well. So previously it was just kind of a same as last year approach, but we'll go through each individual through open enrollment every year and make sure that, it matches up on both sides of the ledger. So that's not to say, there may be a intra-year issue, but we can solve that without, coming hat in hand for 3 years worth of it.
So we're going to require everyone to actively open enroll going forward?
No. What we'll do is on the report that we get from Worcester Retirement, when we go and put our plans back in during open enrollment to kind of renew with no changes, HR is going to match up those two sides of deductions and make sure that so it won't be incumbent upon the individual. HR is going to do it.
It wasn't an individual issue. It wasn't an open enrollment thing. It was internal.
Right. Someone had selected individual plan, but they were getting billed on the family cost.
Correct. But it didn't matter. The open enrollment didn't matter.
Did they confirm the individual plan? Like, did we go back to the?
It was an internal coding issue, not the individual selecting anything. So whether or not they selected it wasn't.
I mean, the individual didn't notice that their payments to health insurance didn't go down.
Well,
right.
With that.
And then internally, we do not have the checks and balances to say that they are deducting what is expected versus what is actual, right? So the new part of this is the check and balance of what is being asked for versus what is actually being taken up.
And go ahead, Jeremy, I'm sorry.
We don't have, it's not a huge lift, right? We have, 30 some people, maybe not even in this retiree issue. So, and most of them are not, this is an early retirement. So most of them are not in the health plans like this. They're just in the supplemental. So it's a really quick check. It's an hour thing.
Right. Is there any concern on the state level for kind of reimbursing this? Is there any kind of, like, have we gone to town council on this? Have they reviewed this?
Yes, town council's reviewed the warrant and has the memo from HR.
Did they validate like that no bills were submitted under the family plan outside of what they were reimbursed for? So yes, he was supposed to have individual coverage. He had family coverage. He didn't use any of the coverage that was paid for.
He did not have family coverage. So that was one of my kind of first questions too. The plan was switched to individual, and the town was paying individual premiums, and he was receiving an individual plan and its benefits, but the deductions that were coming out of Worcester retirement were akin to a family plan, not an individual one.
Gotcha. And do we confirm the benefits that they have each year to the person? So were we actively each year confirming that he had individual coverage, yet deducting family rates?
So we weren't doing the deducting, Worcester County was. So that deduction is a passive thing for us. We don't reach out to retirees and say, you still want this coverage, right? It's incumbent upon them during open enrollment to reach out to us.
But who's confirming each year your benefit level?
Confirming the benefit level. So that you want to stay in the
Yeah,
plan?
regardless of each open enrollment, there's a period you offer it, you should be confirming to the, I'm gonna say employee because that's my day-to-day, but in confirming your benefit level, whether it's passive or active on the open enrollment, don't they get like a confirmation of benefits?
Yeah, they get some sort of letter. I'm not sure which. Retirees are treated a little bit different than active employees. Active employees, right? We do all sorts of outreach and have events, and they make the active, not passive decision. But how retirees do it is kind of the same as last year, unless they tell us otherwise.
So we can hash out the HR operation procedures at another time. Unless there's any other comments or questions particular to this specific article.
No, it's just that hopefully we learn some lessons that we can have a check and balance so this doesn't occur. Both for the, former employee, but also for the town, so we're not having to do this again. That's all.
Great. Any other comments or questions? All right, call for roll call vote. All those in favor?
Amendola, aye.
Current aye.
Sientra, aye.
Had it, aye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. This one's good. All right. Can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 11, the water study reclassification?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
So this, like I said in the commentary, the water study, which we're now going on to phase 4, has had a number of different funding pieces between ARPA and some state grants. We have not used any local funds for this. It's something that the team's really proud of, because it doesn't. We wouldn't want to use general taxpayer dollars to a great extent to study this, which we know has a smaller user base. In the same way we talked about trash earlier. So in July 2024, the first week of the fiscal year, so it was like the check run on my third day here, there was a invoice charged erroneously to a state grant, $65,350. Accounting just noticed that the grant was in deficit a couple weeks ago. There was an ARPA fund to pay for this, and there was $65,350 left in the fund, but it needs to be encumbered to a contract by the end of calendar year 2024. I had reached out to all parties involved, said, hey, we're good on invoices, right? Everything's been paid, and we're all set. So I closed out that fund at risk of losing that $65,000 eligibility to use it. So I closed out that fund and we used it on essentially general fund expenses, town hall expenses. So stuff that otherwise would have been paid for the general fund was paid from this allocation. We reclassified the allocation at the select board level. And so that means that $65,000 worth of stuff that would have otherwise hit the general fund did not. And now we have to close this deficit in the grant. Or if we don't, if this fails, at the end, when we go to certify our free cash in the fall, this $65,000 will show up on our balance sheet as a deficit, and our free cash will be dinged, so to speak, will be held back in equal amount. So whether we fill this deficit or don't, we're not going to have access to the free cash in the fall.
Any other questions or comments?
Explain that last part again. It's only that amount, not the whole bundle of free cash.
Right. If we had, say, $1 million if we had no deficits whatsoever and we had $1 million available in free cash, but then we had this deficit, we would only have $935,000 to be able to spend from free cash. So the state would hold that back on our certification until we rectified this deficit in one way or the other. We see it with police detail accounts. We see it with Chapter 90 because that's a reimbursable program, but we're getting a little bit better about that. So each year, I'm going to show you the certifications. Each year, there will be some sort of deficit that we get dinged for. We minimized that deficit by over $300,000 at the end of fiscal 24, which was part of the, if you recall, part of the reason why free cash jumped so dramatically.
Hey, any other questions or comments? Roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendeley, aye.
Really?
Cantor, aye.
Haddad, aye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamuto, aye.
Prager, aye. All right, can I get a vote to, get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 14, the police matching grant fund?
So move.
Second.
Discussion.
We do this every year. They have to match funds in a uneven way, but throughout the year to be able to access state and federal funds. $3,500 allows them to do that. It creates a special article fund. Anything that doesn't get spent stays in the fund. They usually spend pretty close to it. I think there's like, I don't know, $900 or $1,100 in the fund right now. This is the same amount they've asked for before, and I've confirmed that with the chief that this is sufficient for what their anticipation is in fiscal 26.
Questions or comments? Roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendeley, aye.
Curly.
Cantor, aye.
Haddad, aye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamuto, aye.
Prager, aye.
So I'm not sure. Do you have to take a vote on this? You voted the budget. I'm not sure if you need to also vote a recommendation on the article for the budget.
I don't know. We usually do.
Okay.
So do it real quick. Get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 15, the general fund budget.
So move.
Second.
Discussion.
I'm done talking about this.
Yeah, we just voted to approve it. So you have your chance to put in whatever you want, but yeah, okay. Any questions or comments? All right, roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendeley, aye.
Curly.
Cantor, aye.
Haddad, aye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamuto, aye.
Prager, aye. Get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 16, the water budget.
So move.
Second.
So the water department fiscal 26 enterprise budget. So we have. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that Dan was here. I would have said to do this first. So fiscal 26 balanced at $227,000 on revenue and expense. This uses $20,000 from retained earnings. When we talk about E&D on the school level, free cash on the general fund level, retained earnings is the term for enterprise funds. It's essentially the exact same thing. So this kind of stabilizes the rate increases that we would otherwise have to have. This is the sorts of stuff we spend. So we're going to vote the $227,000 number. I think Dan had sent me an update on this. This is the type of stuff we spend money on. Out of the $227,000, $165,000 of it's in the purchase of water. That's the biggest expense for the fund. We don't own a heck of a lot of infrastructure otherwise.
Comments or questions? Roll call vote. All those in favor?
Mendeley, aye.
Curly.
Cantor, aye.
Haddad, aye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamuto, aye.
Prager, aye.
Is there keeping?
Oh, crap.
Who's turned the TV turned off on you?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I think it's set to shut off at 10 because they kept leaving it on.
All right.
I should change that later.
Yeah, we're back.
All right.
We can see you.
Great.
Okay.
Article 17.
Yep.
All right, so this is the revolving fund caps. Importantly, this is not a cap on.
Jeremy, you're not sharing the article.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, I was still on the water. Can you see it now?
Yep. All right. Can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town to support Article 17, the revolving fund caps?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Go for it.
So these are the spending caps in any one fiscal year that need to be voted annually. I've said before, part of the Municipal Empowerment Act would have only changes need to be voted each year, but that's not currently the case. In this case, all the caps stay the same except for parks. As you recall, up the cap mid-year for parks this year based upon, we hadn't moved it in a couple of years. We have more programs with higher wages and whatnot. So then we had a discussion at joint meeting, and then Dan followed up at a select board meeting thereafter to talk about what the fiscal 26 cap looks like. And like I said, you set this each year, so $250,000 is the request right now. Importantly for the parks revolving fund, anything over $10,000, any individual expense over $10,000 needs approval from select board or town meeting. So that's that kind of additional check because it is such a larger fund relative to everything else. This supports the summer rec programs, beach, and then park improvements as a result.
Great. Any questions or comments?
Dan, based on all the work that we did down at the lake, are you guys looking for like increased numbers? What's your thought? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, the lake, so the lake is actually mostly supported through the general fund. So lifeguards get paid through the general fund, shack is through the revolving fund. I think the big thing down the lake is trying to drive more traffic. Now that that's been cleaned up, focus on activities, events. I know we're working this year to hopefully expand some of our summer offerings and potentially bring in a beer vendor or alcohol sales vendor for the summer concerts. Try and get more people down there. I think that's the main goal down there. It's more, honestly, it's more non-residents than residents. Which is great that we serve as a resource and they pay a premium to come to our beach, but it'd be nice to see more Mendon people coming here as well.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions or comments? The roll call vote, all those in favor?
Delay,
Pietro,
Heaven, aye.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye.
One more point I meant to make on this, just to make future discussions. So the planning board cap will likely be down in fiscal 27. We are now correctly identifying project-based expenses and revenues, and rather than have them in one place together where they need that large of a cap, instead of 53.5, they should be in 53G accounts. So we're in the process of unwinding that. So you will likely see a smaller cap for planning in fiscal 27.
Okay.
Did it 18, 19. Sorry, I know this can be nauseating when I scroll.
Not that we can scroll that far.
Article 25, R mode additional parcels. This is to change the zoning bylaw to add age restricted mixed use overlay district to 3 North Ave, the Taft Orchard. And planning board will be presenting on this.
Does finance committee need to make a recommendation on this?
So I don't know that you do. There have been financial implications so far in that, we've taken it off the tax rolls, we spent money to acquire it. If we put this into age restricted mixed use development, there's the possibility that we then add stuff back onto the tax rolls, but that's not a certainty by just adding it to a district. And that would be, just revenue additive. It wouldn't be the town expending any funds.
There's no money involved in this article as written, correct?
Correct. Yep. That's.
Have to vote on it.
Yeah, I mean, I have an opinion, as I do everything, but.
No, absolutely, but a formal vote isn't required by us.
Not required, but this, is there, because this could represent, because this approach does represent possible revenue opportunities, it is financially related. Right, so this is a piece of, we are not required, that doesn't mean we can't wait. Right.
I'm sure we could, if it was, it's not required, I'm sure if a citizen in the audience asked what the finance committee thinks about doing this, then we would be, I wouldn't say obligated to make it, but I would then say, yeah, we support doing this because of these reasons. It could generate more funds, or no comment.
Yeah, I guess I would like for us to vote on it to have a official position on the benefit of it, and the town moderator can determine whether that is part of the official ask or the official process for this article. And at least we've weighed in, and if somebody on the floor does ask, we have a voted on position.
Right, you can respond by saying, yes, the finance committee among themselves voted on this and support.
Yeah.
Or
not.
Or not.
And this is the land where the senior center is scheduled to go, or proposed to go?
Yes.
So how would it affect that?
My interpretation of the discussions on the senior center was that it was the hope that the lower part of the parcel could be used in future mixed use development, whether in a private partnership or otherwise. So as I understand it, it wouldn't.
Yeah, and we've had these conversations before. Putting the overlay on the area does not force it into a specific utilization. It just provides the opportunity for another utilization. I'm fully expecting the conversation on the floor to be mixed use is not municipal related, of which that was the purpose of which the town purchased the land, and there to be a lot of back and forth on those direct items, as we've seen every year when we try to talk about these things. All right. So.
Haven't we didn't learn our lesson with the adult entertainment zone that we zoned?
Well, I mean, that was a forced location, otherwise it could have been anywhere.
Or we could have zoned it next to the police station.
Could have.
I don't know about this, what happened?
That's what
All right, so tangent, it's 10 o'clock.
Okay, tell me later, it sounds interesting.
So, okay. Can I get a motion to vote to recommend to the town, or can I vote to get a motion to set an official position on either supporting or not supporting Article 25? No?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So discussion. I personally, I think that it's good for us to support things like this, again, just to give opportunity for us to have other revenue streams. If we are in fact tired of overtaxing our senior citizens and others, this can be an opportunity to find ways to utilize land to do such a thing. We can't talk out of both sides of our mouths as a town to continually remove things from our tax base and stop things from revenue generating avenues from being built in this town, and complain that things are coming out of our own pockets. So I would personally like to see us have an aligned position of supporting this, and hopefully people can get on board, because we need to find new ways to be generating revenue. And if this overlay allows an opportunity to arise in which we can then go through all of the rigmarole and significant amount of processes it takes to get there, this at least opens up opportunities to be presented to the town. It doesn't mean that it has to be done that way. It just allows the opportunities to present themselves. And we need to be much more open to those things. So
I think if we're gonna vote on something, that we should be presented from the planning board some information about this versus just what we have here.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't feel comfortable voting in favor of this. It's not a money article. I think the case has to be made for this on the floor. If folks feel strongly about it, they should speak to it on the floor. But it's not a money article. I would recommend that we not recommend one way or the other on this and hear the debate on the floor.
that is a position you can take. Okay. Any other comments or questions? I said my piece. All right. All those in favor of supporting this article, not as an official position that will be part of the actual reading of the article on town floor, but all those in favor of supporting the article in general, looking for ayes. So Krager, aye.
I don't.
All those opposed?
I'm in support of it, but I don't know what I'm voting, really.
So, all right, so.
So clarify, if we vote no, we're saying we don't support providing a recommendation.
We're not taking a position.
So you can, if you don't know, you can abstain. You can vote no, I don't believe that we should recommend supporting this article. So what I'm asking for is a vote for the question on the floor that shows up, as Mike pointed out, could happen. What is Finance Committee's recommendation on this article? Because it won't be an official, when we go through the process, right? The town moderator says, what is Finance Committee's position? And that's what we've been voting on all along. That will not be a part of the operating of this article. So in the event that we get asked our position, it would be great for us to have a voted position. Because it is financial in nature that could be asked. So I'm trying to prepare us for that. So you can either vote yes, you support the article in its intent, which is just a piece of information. You can vote, you can abstain because you want to hold off, or you can vote no, that you do not support it. And if it's all no's, then we can say, hey, the recommendation from the Finance Committee is don't support this article.
No, Mike, if I may, I don't think a no vote is being opposed to the article. I think a no vote, quite frankly, here, or a recommendation is not to have a recommendation here, quite frankly. It's not a money article, and quite frankly, as it stands right now, I don't know what the impact is from a revenue perspective. I don't know what the impact is from an expense perspective on this change. So, like, frankly, we could get called on something like that. Like, what is the impact? We don't know what the impact is. So why are we voting on this?
The motion's been made and seconded and is in order, and now we're going through the voting. So in order to not have a recommendation on this, the motion would have to be, the chair could, ask you to vote.
I don't think the motion that you were making is quite as clear as what the committee is trying to express. Because I think the way you're saying it says, if I vote no, I don't support that, which is not necessarily what I hear from the room.
Right, and if everybody can abstain.
But as abstain as, like, you could vote one and everybody abstains, it passes, right?
No, that's not how it works. An abstention, it has the effect of a no. You still need a majority, yes.
Okay, then I have the way I can vote on this.
Right, so if everybody abstained, then that means we have no position because there was no majority of a yes or no. That's my interpretation.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
And Carl abstained.
Okay, so so the yays is, sounds like it's just me. Okay, opposed?
That's the answer, no.
Okay, abstained?
Amanda Lear abstains.
Hodgins abstain.
Zamuda abstains.
Haddad abstains.
Okay.
That's a complicated one.
So the motion to recommend failed. It was not a motion to not recommend. So I am going to write this in this report, and this is kind of more of a question, as if there was no vote to recommend. And then individually, you all are residents of the town and can speak at town meeting after planning board presents on this.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, so if somebody in the audience asked if the FinCom has any recommendations, the reply would be the Finance Committee has no recommendations, yay or nay on this,
Correct.
which keeps us neutral.
Correct. And then I can, as a citizen, get up and talk about
Right.
our double standard.
Here's what I think, my opinion, et cetera, Somebody else will get up, it could turn into a real shit show.
Oh, yeah.
Or not.
Yeah. That property turns into a long conversation every time it gets brought up.
It sure does.
Maybe we should make a walking path there. This one is going to be the healthiest town in America with the amount of walking paths we have.
Well, it's hilly, so.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Millions of dollars on walking paths. All right, can I get a motion? A motion to vote to recommend to the town to support 2060.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this has even less financial impact. This just so we comport with FEMA guidelines for it has financial impacts on private homeowners, but not at all in the town. Financial impacts if we don't pass it. Stabilization, SCABA, wetland protection, also the same thing. There's serious changes presented by Concom, but not having to do with the expenditure of money. Town meeting voting bylaw. This is from the General Bylaw Review Committee. This is just codifying a thing that we already do. Town election date bylaw, we've talked about this one ad nauseum too. It just, so it comports, this is section 2, so it comports with changes we already made to section 1. Employment restriction bylaw, oh shoot, that's not what I wrote that backwards. The select, sorry about that. The select board voted to pass over Article 32. The general bylaw committee is just not kind of there yet on this one. There's too many differing opinions on it. And then the gender neutral bylaw language, the select board voted favorable on this. A question from the chairman about possible expenditure of money related to this. It is negligible at best. It is a much different animal than going from Board of Selectmen to Select Board. We have, I think, 2 copies of the general bylaws printed right now, and it's just on regular printer paper. So we would print off, a few hundred extra pages, which is marginal on the town budget. And we don't have forms or anything like that that reference bylaws that have gender specific language.
Is this recommending, and I'm sorry if this was already covered in a previous meeting, is all the he's being changed to he, she, he, her, they, etc.? Or is it just a gender neutral like they?
It as it makes sense. So it'll be he, she, it'll be they. I don't have the specific recommendation. The General Bylaw Review Committee may have one, whether they want to say they or their or his/her. I'm not sure. But that's a good question for the committee. I didn't think to ask it.
I'm just bringing my lived experience. I would go more with like a gender neutral thing versus a he, she, they.
Well, that's what the article says, gender neutral language throughout.
But then it says to
Yeah, but
read
then
he,
it's-
hers, which means whoever's doing it is gonna make a determination based on
Yeah.
name. And that
Yeah.
is problematic, so.
Yeah, there's an implicit bias to just having he, she, and not being more inclusive. You're
Correct,
totally right.
correct.
So I
That's all
I
I'm
would
saying.
You work in HR?
Yeah. Can you tell?
I will change the commentary on that because I think that's a great idea, and I'll make sure the General Bylaw Review Committee has it the same way. But as the motion is crafted, it won't say one way or the other, and then it's kind of the administrative piece to say, how do we do it?
We're not voting on this, right?
No, I had asked to look into any expenses because when we went from Board of Selectmen to Select Board, it cost us like 15 grand in collateral we needed to regenerate.
Really?
Yeah,
It's probably like you can name cards and like.
everything. Yeah.
More infrastructure around that.
Well, it's just legal,
So,
right?
what's that?
That's a lot of legal expense. I
Yeah,
assume.
there was a lot of expenditure that needed to happen because of that, so. But it's not about the article itself, it's just if we need to expend, if this is worse, let's say it was $50,000, like I get the intent, but is that the best use of $50,000, right?
Yeah, it was a good and pertinent question, but the answer is we're not going to have expenditures of money on this beyond normal wear and tear stuff.
Perfect. Rock on. Great,
That is
that's the last one.
That is the end, my friends.
Oh, thank God. Okay. All right. So last item was meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of October 30th, 2024, November 12th, 2024, February 12th, 2025.
You mean February 3rd?
February 12th.
February 12th is what I saw.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, February 12th. Yep, sorry.
March 3rd, 2025. The upgraded March 10th, 2025, where John Holden's name was corrected and he was in attendance. March 12th, 2025, and finally March 18th, 2025.
You said March 5th, right?
I didn't see March 5th.
That one's there.
Is it in there?
Yeah,
Should be.
I didn't print that. Let me check. I got 3, 10, 12.
Was it not on the attachments?
No, there was one there.
Okay.
Not in the attachment that I printed these
The
from.
gremlin in your printer ate it.
But I will add it. What was the date?
March 5th.
Great. All right. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Mendeley, aye?
Cantor abstain.
Had it, I.
Hodgins, aye.
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. Awesome. Lost my agenda. That was great. We did that. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote.
Mendeley, aye?
Hodgins, aye.
Had it,
Zamudo, aye.
Gregor, aye. Meeting is closed at 10:24 p.m.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the discussions and all these.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for